Hey guys, welcome to the channel. As you see in the thumbnail, what if Natsu was raised by Achnologia Part 2. Before I start, please do support for more awesome content and subscribe my channel and like this video. Go support and follow the Blackhatred for writing that awesome fanfic, and also make sure to comment on this story, link in the description. Let's start this video. Fairy tale lion growled a snarl on his face. He tilted the ruins so that the moonlight wouldn't hit Deliora. He said that in the last chapter. WTF, the old man randomly explained. Natsu suddenly jumped up and head-butted Lion. Unfortunately, it was just an ice clone which in turn shattered, leaving Natsu stuck in the air. "Can't dodge midair, can you?" he said, schooling ice eagles at him. Natsu let out a torrent of flames from his mouth to both get him back on the ground and melt the birds. He lit his feet on fire and got himself into a handstand. He spun around, letting the flames spread out. Lion dodged but was then suspended in the air. Natsu took this chance and spat another hurricane of flames at his opponent. Yet the stone below him crumbled and he fell down, thus missing his target. "Zardy, that was your interference, wasn't it?" The old man Zardy smiled. "Ah, you saw through me, but I can't lose you just yet, you see." Lion scowled. "I will defeat Deliora," he said. "It would be a disgrace to my name if I don't beat this brat." The room began to become coated in ice at his words, and the brat in question emerged from the hole. "Defeat Deliora? That's his intention?" Lucy asked, stunned, as she ran alongside Gray, Urza, and Happy. "You're a freak," Natsu deadpanned. "Anything to surpass all and to continue dreaming." He released more ice eagles, and Natsu skillfully dodged. "Because this up person died," he said blandly. "Gray killed her." Lion yelled, surprising Natsu with a stray bird. It impacted Raisin's steam. Cold eyes gleamed through the obstruction. "So all of the villagers are suffering because you can't leave the past behind you." "But Up is not dead," Gray said at the climax of his tale. This news surprised his companions. "It was 10 years ago when Lion and Up found me after Deliora destroyed my hometown. And that's where it all began." Tilted her head in the direction of the mountain, and Happy did the same. "The mountain's tilted." She stated the obvious. "Natsu probably did it," Gray said. "Now, thanks to him, intentionally or not, moonlight will no longer reach Deliora." Rustling from the surrounding bushes startled them. From the brush came the same men who had been chanting strange words on the wizard's first day on the island. "We found you, fairy tale," one of the masked men sneered. "A bunch of weirdos," Happy exclaimed. Urza faced them, sword in hand. "Go on," she said. "Go settle things with Lion." Gray nodded and ran towards the tilted landform. "Lion doesn't know that Ul is still alive. I have to stop him." Lion created an ice wall to separate him and Natsu and said the mage was about to destroy the obstacle when he caught a familiar smell. A side of the frozen room began to crack and fall apart. Gray burst into the room. "Let me take care of him." Natsu, the fire mage, crossed his arms and stood up straight. Gray turned to Lion. "I know that you blamed me for killing Ul 10 years ago, and I completely agree with your judgment, but," Gray glared, "I won't forgive you for hurting my comrades." Gray spread his legs and crouched slightly. He stretched both arms out straight and crossed them with one palm up and the other down. "That posture?" Lion gasped while Natsu appeared mildly confused. "Shall we both undergo punishment, Lion?" Gray almost whispered as magic filled the room. "Iced shell?" Lion yelled. Natsu narrowed his eyes. "Didn't he say that spell would kill him?" Gray glared. "Return the village people back to normal and leave. This is your last chance." Lion blinked, then chuckled. "Oh, this is just a threat, how ridiculous." The large blast of magic pushed Lion back. Gray's body began to glow. Serious shards of ice began to protrude from his body, cutting through the bandages. Natsu leaned slightly, bearing against the pressure. "I'm prepared to die." Lion looked shocked for a moment, but then smiled. "Well then, do it. I know you're not willing to give up your life." Gray stared at him. "You disappoint me," iced she. Natsu punched him down. "What the hell, Natsu?" His voice trailed off as he looked into the Dragon Slayer's eyes. Natsu was staring him down with a dark glare. "Are you really about to kill yourself? Stop running away." Suddenly the ruins began to shake. Outside, Urza had finished defeating the chanters and looked up confused. "Urza, look." Lucy exclaimed. "The ruins aren't tilted anymore." "The great waste of my time," Natsu complained. "Sorry to disturb you." Zardy entered from Gray's entrance, "But I had to make the ruins upright again for the sun to set soon." Lion nodded. "How did you do that?" Natsu demanded. Zardy laughed. "How did you do that?" Natsu repeated. Zardy turned and left to say, "I must prepare the ritual." Natsu's eye twitched from being ignored. He turned to Gray. "If you kill yourself, I swear I will resurrect you and kill you again in the most painful way." Gray nodded with a sweat drop as Natsu ran after the old man. His focus returned to Lion. They stared each other down until Gray chose to speak. "All is alive." He knew it was an awkward way to start his explanation, but he didn't care. Lion's eyes widened. "Up lives as the ice. So what you're doing, in order to melt Deliora, you are melting Ul." Lion approached him. "I promised her not to tell you," but Lion's eyes were shaded. "So just stow. Gray coughed up blood, Lion had pierced through his stomach with an ice sword, a malicious smile ruined his face, that's not all anymore, just scraps of ice. Zardi stared at Natsu as the boy's smile faded, what can't take a joke. Deliora's ice began to crack and chip off as it melted. I'll probably die trying to kill this thing, he thought. Oh well, I lived a shitty life. He jumped up and kicked at Zardi, not really caring if he hit or not. The old man dodged. You do realize that you are just accelerating the speed of the melting ice, right? Natsu shrugged but stayed silent. The ruins are shaking again, Gray said, wiping his mouth. Lion smirked. The ritual has started, Deliora is melting. So I guess this is it, you couldn't stop me. Old Gray thought sadly. 3 years, Lion raised his hand, 3 years I've waited for this. Ice spades erupted from around Gray, he crossed his arms to protect his face. Finally I will surpass all. Gray put a fist in his palm, then held both arms out to his sides, the spades disappeared. Gray looked at him. So you wasted 3 years on this ridiculous goal of yours, Lion grit his teeth. Ridiculous. He bellowed and smashed a frozen object atop Gray's head, you've wasted 10 years in a crap guild. Gray had blocked the aggravated assault by holding his hands over his head. I just believed Anul, she told us that there were stronger mages in the world. Fairy tale is just where I ended up. Lion etched whatever he launched forward, forming a tiger around his hand. The only way to surpass all is to defeat Deliora. Gray dodged, someone so blind is trying to surpass all. You're 100 years too early for that. Game over, try again. He created an ice sword and slashed Lion in half, but the man crumbled into ice. Lion was always behind him, Ice Maker. Snow Tiger. The monstrous beast charged at Gray, he leaped high into the air and formed an ice cage to trap it. Lion snorted, I'll just smash your ice creation. The tiger struggled against the cage, but was unable to break it when Lion started. I told you that one-handed magic was unbalanced and unstable, it was Ul's teachings. Lion stood shocked in his place. But you don't seem to care anymore, Gray held up his hands as if he was holding a large gun. Ice makes cannon. A giant cannon materialized and Gray let it shoot off at Lion. The albino screamed as he was blown back, the walls behind him crumbled. Lion stood and stared at Gray before finally collapsing. The raven let out a breath but fell to his knees when blood spurted from his abdomen. He froze the wound, mumbling how he should have done that in the first place. Suddenly an unfinished roar ripped through the island. Natsu flinched violently and thought his ears were bleeding. Drama queen, Deliora ripped from the ice, yes. Zardi yelled as Natsu grunted obscenities under his breath. Deliora, the roar had awakened Lion. Shit, Gray cursed, I've got no choice, I have to use ice shell. Roared and thrashed, flinging half-melted ice everywhere. Natsu watched it shake. It's dead already, Humflame, he thought. It's here. It's finally here, Zardi yelled in excitement. What was that? Lucy stammered. Maybe it was your tummy, Happy commented. It's possible that the roar belonged to Deliora. Lucy gasped. Has it been resurrected? Happy turned to the large hole in the floor. Ah, it's Moondrip. He exclaimed. Deliora roared again. You need to eat something, Happy criticized. Lucy ignored him. He hasn't been fully revived, yet Urza noted, watching in the stream of Moondrip. Come with me, she said, rushing for the stairs. Lucy blinked, but Deliora is down there. Urza kept running. We must stop the ritual. Natsu sighed. Might as well stop it now. Just as he leaped forward, something smacked him in the head, altering his course. He flipped over to land on his feet. The object came speeding towards him again. He hit it and it shattered, but then suddenly reformed and hit him in the stomach. No effect. Zardi frowned but continued his attack. This guy can manipulate time, apparently, Natsu thought. It smacked him in the head again, but he glanced at the demon. He can't manipulate creatures. The ball stopped and stood mid-air. What's your true objective here? Natsu asked. You obviously don't have the same goal as Lion. Ho ho, nothing gets past you, Salamander. All I want is to make it mine. Zardi started banking, but Natsu wasn't listening. He was bored about the old man's reason. There is a time you need power, Zardi said. Natsu snorted. If you're a real mage, then you'd have all the power you need. Bandity will destroy you, Zardi said. He put an arm up and the ceiling began to crumble. You people are idiots. Natsu almost growled. He lunged forward and punched Zardi hard in the face, sending the foe spinning through the air. Thobi landed comically on the ground. Yay, we stopped. Moondrip. Yura frowned. No, we were too late. Natsu and Gray started as the demon towered over them. Gray looked down at the water, cupped some in his hand, and let it flow through his fingers. Oh, he thought sadly. Natsu ran over. There's nothing to worry about. Finally we met. The two opposites turned to look at Lion crawling on the ground. He struggled to get up. The monster she couldn't defeat. Finally I'll surpass her. Natsu faced him. Actually, Gray hit the back of Lion's head, knocking him out. I'll take care of this. Gray got in position for an iced shell, but Natsu stepped in front of him. Move. You're in the way. Natsu had his annoyance clear on his face. The damn demon's already dead. Deliora raised its fist. Look out. Gray yelled. Natsu rolled his eyes and held out a hand. Delia's fist sped downwards and impacted but instantly crumbled. The demon's body shattered and fell to the floor. Boy, Lion had gained consciousness, and both he and Grey watched the demon fall. And no, it can't be, Lion gaped. Deliora was already dead, Natsu said with a TT face. Those were its final moments. Tears leaked from Lion's eyes. Now I'll never surpass all. Grey placed a hand over his face and let his own tears fall. Thank you, teacher. Grey watched the two of them, the pain of losing a loved person and the pain of losing your goal. He thought, I know how you feel, I understand your sorrows. I couldn't believe that I was worried this whole time, Lucy groaned. I sir. Happy said as he flitted around Natsu's head. He stood stoically to the side, arms crossed, waiting for the idiots on his team to remember the real mission. Urza humphed. Your mission hasn't ended yet, you still need to fix the villagers and you'll still be punished when you get back. Lucy, Happy, and Grey froze. Natsu yawned, then began to walk away. Grey glanced at him. Well, how do we return them to normal? He blinked, then turned to Lion. Don't know, he said plainly. We've never messed with the villagers and they never visited. I doubt moon drip has any effect on humans anyways. What makes you say that? Lucy asked. We've basked in the light for 3 years, Lion replied. This has become complicated. Ira mused. Come, we must go. The team began to walk away following Natsu. Grey glanced back at Lion. What? Said Mage asked. Grey smiled. You should join a guild. You'll have a family and I'm sure you'll find a new goal. Lion turned his head. Whatever just went already. Grey, Ira, Happy, and Lucy reached the storage area, but no one was there, not even Natsu. I'll grab some first aid, Grey said. One of the villagers came from their left. Please, we must hurry to the village. They were shocked at the scene when they arrived. The village looked as if it was never destroyed. But it was destroyed. Natsu stood in the center looking around suspiciously. Did Zardi do this? He thought. When will you destroy the moon? A yell broke through the festive mood. We will obliterate the moon in due time, but I would like to confirm something. Urza spoke. She said that like a regular thing. Grey sweat dropped. So you gained this form after the moon appeared 3 years ago? The mayor nodded. Only when the moon comes out do we transform. Urza continued. The ritual has been held for the same amount of time. You should have noticed the light from the Ryukai. Urza fell into Lucy's pitfall. I didn't do it, Lucy covered her ears in worry. Ira got up and continued talking. Such nerve, some villagers thought with a sweat drop. Why didn't you investigate? The people glanced uneasily at each other and the mayor sighed. We aren't able to get near the ruins. If we walk in a straight line we just end up back in the village. That explains everything. Everyone turned to Natsu. Up in a tree, Zardi watched with a smile on his face. Amazing, that salamander, he's already figured it out. He grinned wider, though it was hindered due to his grotesquely swollen cheek. Natsu leaned against a building. We really just have to destroy the moon. So you've realized it as well, Natsu. Ira said. The fire mage nodded. Change into your giant armor and we must head to the village tower. Though she did not like to be ordered around, Ira complied and followed. This will cause hell. Grey ground. This should be impossible, Lucy moaned. This is funny. Happy chirped. Once the two were on the tower, Urza summoned her evil crushing spear and explained her plan to Natsu. He nodded and got behind her, fist raised. I don't want to see how this turns out, Grey sighed. Ira aimed directly at the moon and began her throw. Natsu. She yelled. He punched the back of the spear, giving it more force and sending it rocketing from her hands, making her stumble. Everyone watched wide-eyed as the spear hit the moon. It began to crack. The villagers cheered. No way, Grey and Lucy yelled. Suddenly the sky seemed to shatter, revealing a normal grey moon. The villagers yelled. What is this? Grey asked. Urza smiled at her success. The island was covered in a layer. Think of it as exhaust fumes from moon drip. It created a hard layer over the island, making the moon appear purple, she explained. The villagers began to glitter. Now the curse will be broken. Natsu said, bored. So pretty, Happy exclaimed. The glittering stopped, but nothing changed. Oh no, Happy nearly cried. Nah, this is their regular appearance, Natsu yawned. Wait, so you mean, Lucy shuddered. These people at Demons? Grey finished her question. Yep, both Natsu and Urza said, as if it was the most obvious thing in the world. It just affected their memory. Lucy fell to her knees. Grey turned to the nearest monster next to him. For real? The demon scratched his cheek. I'm still confused. Amazing, I'm glad I left this in your hands, the mayor gasped. Bobo ghost. Lucy squealed. We demons don't die from being stabbed in the chest, he laughed. Wait, weren't you the sailor? Grey asked. How did you disappear from the boat? Bobo disappeared, but Grey found him in the sky. The demon had sprouted wings. The mayor stared at his son with tears in his eyes. Bobo. He yelled, flying after his son, and the two laughed. The whole village then flew after the family. Look at them, Natsu thought. How I envy you. Today we feast. He said loudly that his voice lacked enthusiasm. Up in the trees, Artie still smiled. He turned to the lacrima beside him. Did you see? Segrain sighed. They did better than I expected. Humph, fairy tale. They better not get in our way. Zardi removed his mask and his old male features smoothed, and he now took the appearance of a raven-haired woman. I agree, she said. I fairy tale. Your guild is the best, the villagers yelled as the pirate ship sailed away. Take care. Lucy yelled back. On the other side of the shore, a lion and his group also watched the boat. They're gone, Yuka, or is it Yuta, said. Toby covered his face trying to hide his tears. I'm not crying at all. Sherry turned to Lion, and you were just getting along. Said Ice Mage closed his eyes for a moment. It's fine, anyways. Do you think a guild is fun? I'm disappointed, Altier said, and Segrain sighed. We couldn't have known it was long dead. Altier took a breath. I'm sorry, Segrain-sama. I didn't know that woman's magic was so strong. The Blue Note turned to her. Don't speak of her that way, Tear of UK. Altier, I respect your mother. If she was alive, I'm sure she would be a great wizard saint. He held up his medallion. She was a fool possessed by evil and dumped by my father, but anyways, let's go to the next stage. Segrain blinked, and Altier's cheek suddenly swelled. Kaya, what is this? Segrain laughed. I guess it hasn't healed properly. Oh, and what do you think about Natsu? Altier grimaced while holding her face. Neither of us were using full power, but my attacks didn't affect him at all. Segrain clenched his fist as I thought the child of Igniel kept on burning for the sake of my dream. Ah, finally back. Gray stretched, but all that work for a little key, an S-class job to Happy complained. The village happiness is enough. Ira smiled. Yep, no need to complain. Lucy beamed. Natsu rolled his eyes. You're the only one who benefited, selfishly she frowned. You're the one who dragged us there in the first place, she argued. Natsu ignored her and listened more to the conversion around them. What key did you get? Gray asked, also slightly distracted by the whispers. Sagittarius the archer, Lucy explained, oblivious to the stars. Gray envisioned a guy with a horse head. Lucy frowned and envisioned the normal half-human half-horse combo. Natsu envisioned a creature standing on two horse legs with a buff human body, horse arms with human hands. Somehow it had wings and a hairy demon tail and an elongated head with its mouth twisted into a wide creepy grin, and lastly a long mane running down its spine. What is wrong with your mind? Lucy screamed. Anyways, we need to hurry back for your punishment, Urza stated. I personally could overlook your actions, but it's for the master to decide. Happy paled. Don't tell me we have to do that. Gray held his face. No, anything but that. What is that? Lucy asked, frightened greatly. I doubt that Makarov will punish us after completing the mission. Natsu stated. He looked up and grimaced slightly, though it went unnoticed. Oh, I'm sure that is already a given, and I look forward to finally putting you in your place. She turned to him, but was only met with an outline and a message written in fire. Dear Happy, if you are alive afterwards I will buy you a fish, sincerely Natsu Atred. He ditched us. Gray, Happy, and Lucy screamed. Ira snarled. His punishment will only be extended. She turned again and continued walking. The others trailed behind looking depressed. They walked along, and both Urza and Lucy finally noticed the whispers. They froze once they reached their guild. Lucy said. What? Gray stuttered. Happy just stared. What happened here? Urza growled. Phantom Lord did this? Urza and Gray angrily asked. Mira nodded yes, everyone has taken refuge in the basement. Come on, we'll explain the situation. They followed her into the wreckage and down a flight of stairs. Guild members greeted them sullenly, though Master Makarov acted as if nothing happened. Yo. He exclaimed in a drunken haze. Okay, where's Natsu? I'll punish him later, but for now. The old man raised his hand. He hit Gray and Happy on the head, saying bad. He hit Lucy on her butt. Warahin puffed out her cheeks. Master, behaved. Urza stomped forward. Master. Do you not understand our current situation? The guild has been destroyed. Gray added. Makarov rested his head in his hands. No need getting worked up over it, they did it during the night, so no one was injured. Gray smashed his hand on the table. We can't accept what he said. Master hit Lucy's butt again. Shut up, Gray. Lucy sighed. Why is he hitting my butt? Makarov got up and walked away, saying that he needed to take a leak. The team watched in shocked silence. Mira looked at them with sad eyes. The master is as shocked as us, but warfare is prohibited by the council, she said. Urza nodded. This is the way master feels, we have to accept that. Natsu walked down empty streets, glancing left and right in case the master sent any mages after him. Though I wonder who destroyed the guild, he thought, judging by the metal poles, it could have been the Iron Dragon Slayer. He reached a corner and walked around it, only to be suddenly hugged by a random girl. She had long green hair flowing loose, dark brown eyes, pale skin, and was wearing a thin white dress. He noticed that some men in hospital clothes, doctors, were chasing her. She smiled up at him while he remained confused. Run away. He thought. Goodbye. The girl exploded, spraying gore all over the ground and Natsu. The people chasing her froze and stared at the fire mage. Blood covered his entire front, and organs clung to his clothes, though most were laying in a pile souped in a blood puddle. An eyeball rolled across the sidewalk. He stared down at it as the blood began to dry on his face, his eyes wide in surprise. The moment replayed in his mind, though everything was different. The sky was red and the city around him was flooded with flames, and there was screaming. A young girl with long pink hair ran towards him, tears in her eyes. Behind her were men in black robes. He grabbed her, accidentally touching something on her back, and then Natsu felt the sensation of being shaken, and he came back to reality. One of the doctors was holding his shoulders with trembling hands, a female woman with short curly blonde hair and green eyes filled with shock. "Hey, all you alright?" she stuttered. Natsu took a shuddering breath to regain his composure. "I am fine. Please excuse me." His voice was dull and cold, void of any sarcasm, anger, or sadness. "Please go rest and look shaken," he said before turning and stumbling away. It was a while before he reached his cottage in the woods. He was glad that Happy wasn't there and slid down against a wall. The blood had dried against his clothes and face, irrigating his skin. He knew that his dark clothes wouldn't appear stained, so he didn't hurry to wash them. He got into bed and found it almost impossible to sleep, and once he did, only a nightmare kept him company. 6 people surrounded him, all of different ages. 1. His dear sister Haku, 6 years old. 2. A boy with short brown hair and brown eyes. 8. 3. A girl with long blue hair and green eyes. 7. 4. A boy with black hair and blue eyes. 9. 5. A boy with red hair and cobalt eyes. 11. 6. Lisana at 15. They held hands and danced around him in a circle. He himself was young, at age 7. Haiku suddenly burst into a pile of blood, and he just noticed his parents in the background. His father's abdomen suddenly tore open, and all his internals spilled out. His mother's head somehow crushed itself. The gap that his sister formed closed, and the others continued to spin, jumping over her vulgar remains. The brown-haired boy's neck suddenly tore grotesquely, and he fell to the ground. They jumped over his body as well. The blue-haired girl's limbs fell off, and when she fell, her head simply rolled away. As each child died, he felt himself aging. The black-haired boy coughed blood and fell. The boy with red hair was abruptly caught by a noose and hung. The rope disappeared into darkness. He was now 15 and Lisana danced around him laughing. He reached out, but she faded away. Natsu woke in a cold sweat and cringed from the light filtering through his window. He sat staring at the sheets for a moment, then got up, dressed, and proceeded to the guild. Happy didn't come home, he said aloud, and worry etched into his mind. He was passing the southern park entrance when he saw the crowd. They were staring at a tree where 3 figures hung. Guild members starred in anger. Levi, Jet, and Roy were nailed to the tree. Multiple injuries littered their bodies and their clothes in ruin. Levi's shirt was torn open and on her stomach was the Phantom Lord's symbol. "Levi-chan," Lucy said, teary-eyed. Master walked through the crowd and onlookers parted ways for him. His face was overshadowed. The old man stomped his cane into the ground and looked up. He trembled and covered his face. "They can destroy our guild," he said, "but no parent can stand by as their children are harmed." His cane splintered. "This means war." Natsu couldn't see Levi, Jet, or Roy. He saw the red-haired boy and was furious. He still didn't see Happy, and the worst possible explanations entered his mind. "Phantom Lord, you've chosen the wrong day to remind me of that. Haha. We showed those fairies." One mage yelled, "Yeah, I bet they're shivering with their tails tucked beneath their legs." More laughter filled the hall. They smashed beer bottles together and cheered until the whole entrance wall was destroyed. A mage that happened to be in front of the doorway was sent rolling across the ground, creating a deep crevasse before smashing into tables and finally stopping. In front of the ruins stood Natsu with hands in his pockets and a blank bored expression on his face. Natsu leaped forward and punched another mage, sending him flying into others, knocking them down. Phantom Lord, getting over the shock, rushed forward with anger. Bray froze his opponents. Elfman smashed them with a spiked fist. Kana formed bright card magic, and Lo covered his fists with similar magic and punched enemies. At their master, a phantom mage yelled, and a large group rushed after the old man. He boomed into a giant and crushed them with his hand. "Monster." One of the victims yelled. Makarov's hair floated around his face, and his eyes glowed gold. "You harmed this monster's children. No human laws can protect you now." He shrunk back to regular size. "Oze, where are you?" Above them on the wooden support stood Gagiel with a smirk on his face. "Master's plan is working well, so just keep on being reckless, you scum." Lucy strolled away from the hospital. "They left me," she sighed. Suddenly it began to rain even though there were no clouds. "What rain?" Lucy yelled. "Yes, Juvia brings rain," and a girl with blue hair stares at her. "What do you bring?" she asked. Lucy sweat drop and nothing. Juvia turned around hastily while twirling her umbrella. "That was fun, goodbye." "You didn't even say anything," Lucy yelled. The two then heard a man's voice holding a French accent. "Non non non," he repeated. The ground suddenly bulged and a man with a monocle stood in a curved posture. His body bent awkwardly, but he didn't appear uncomfortable. "Juvia-sama, you mustn't walk away from our goal," he said. "And pardon me, I am Soul. You may address me as Monsieur Soul." "Bonjour. We are members of Phantom Lord." Lucy's eyes widened, and why you attacked Levi-chan? She reached for her keys, but was suddenly suspended in a water sphere. She struggled as oxygen was taken from her. Juvia will not kill you, Juvia said. Juvia's mission was to bring you back alive. Elfman smashed through a wall of enemies with his arm converted into that of a demon. Makarov felt proud, though only anger showed on his face. Urza. You're in charge, I'm going up to find Oze. Ira nodded. Take care. Bajil leapt down from his place and attacked some fairy mages, hitting his own comrades in the process. Elfam came from his left yelling about being a man. Gadgil let his arm turn into a pole and lengthened to strike him. Elfman dodged, Gadgil pulled back and used his leg instead, but Elfman caught it. The pole that was also the Iron Mage's leg suddenly convulsed, sending other poles in all directions. Elfman looked back in shock. You attacked your comrades. So unmanly. Gadgil smiled. Pay attention. His iron pole struck the takeover mage over the head, sending him flying. While in mid-air, a shadow stepped on him and launched towards his opponent. Gadgil was hit by a flaming fist. Bastard, you stepped on me, and don't stop my battle. I was beating him. Elfman yelled. Natsu turned away from the other slayer and glared. Don't you dare talk to me. Oi, Gadgil got hit. That's a first, some of the rival mages exclaimed. A pole suddenly impacted with Natsu's stomach, sending him back. He grabbed hold of it and let his fingers melt into the material. Gadgil flinched, Natsu twisted around and sent the other slayer flying up into the support beams. Gadgil twisted midair and landed upside down on a beam. That punk, he said, preparing for another attack. Natsu was suddenly in front of him fast. Gadgil thought as he was sent careening into a higher pole. Spikes materialized on his feet, allowing him to stay in the downright position. He appeared uninjured, but he felt pain on his face. Other fairy mages found themselves staring. None of them had ever seen Natsu fight. They were surprised at his speed and accuracy. Is that all you got, salamander? Gadgil taunted. Natsu was unaffected by the insult and covered his fist with fire. It was darker than normal, but his opponent wouldn't know. The guild suddenly began to shake. Oh, that's Natsu, said Master Makarov's Kana added, though she did not hear Natsu. Fury Gray finished. Ira smiled. No one can stop us now. Makarov walked down a corridor filled with riches. His magic destroyed the mosaic. He growled. What do you think you're doing, huh? A very ugly man sat on a throne. Oh, hello Makarov. Long time no see. If I'm correct, we haven't met since the guildmaster meeting 6 years ago. Man, was I drunk. A giant fist destroyed the wall. I'm not here to relive the past, Oze. Moses's body glitches in image. You coward. The older man yelled. Oze laughed. A battle between two of the great wizard saints would cause too much damage. I prefer rational victory. An image appeared below Oze's feet. Makarov's eyes widened. Lucy. Said blonde was lying unconscious with her hands tied behind her back. Oze brought a knife down towards her. Nuo, the Titan mage, yelled, rushing forward. The large man wearing a blindfold suddenly appeared behind him. Shit, I didn't sense him. The old man thought. The other raised his hands up. Tears streamed from the blindfold. So sad, he said, and Makarov's body was encased in magic. He yelled in pain. I can't use my magic, he thought. The knife Oze had stabbed next to Lucy's body. Don't tell me you don't know who Lucy Hertfilia is. Oh well, it's not your concern anymore. Makarov fell through the floor and down to the center of battle. His body bounced on the floor. All fighting stopped and everyone stared. Master Urza gasped. Arg, my magic power is, Makarov groaned. Elsewhere, Oze was lifting Lucy from the ground. Arya's magic took away the opponent's power, making it void. Victory is ours. Master? Ira yelled in alarm as she ran over to the fallen man. Voices of worry from her guildmates and snickering from the other side filled the room. The fans are over already, Gadgil complained. Natsu stared at the old man. Will he die? He thought, have I gotten too close to him? Will he die like the rest? He spotted Happy flying above their heads. That relieved part of his worries and hoped down from the ledge. Attack them now. They've lost the will to fight. Phantom mages knocked back Fairy Tail, who had just been dominating them. Retreaters called out. What? Most of the fairy mages screamed. We have to avenge the others. Gray yelled. Ira wrapped her arms around him. Please. Elfman held Makarov as Fairy moved away from their rival. Some phantoms still chased them, snickering in delight at their defeated faces. Going home already? Gee, Gadgil snickered, still upside down, sorrowful. Someone voiced above him, Arya, you're so creepy, and how did you manage to defeat the old geezer? Arya spoke calmly, all part of our master's plan. Wonderful. He burst into tears. Don't cry over everything. Gadgil sweat dropped while flipping into the upright position. Did you capture that Lucy chick? Arya stopped crying. She has been confirmed at headquarters. Natsu could hear them as he walked swiftly to the door with Happy under one arm. His guildmates were already past the horizon and he didn't think he had time. Great, now I have to get her, he sighed and stopped at the door. Look, one, I'm still here. He turned and gave them a dark look. If the old man dies, his eyes turn into dark pools of anger, you will meet the devil. The Ingaju locked eyes, the Iron Mage sneered while Natsu simply let out a breath and walked away, though not in the direction of his guild. If I remember correctly, I passed their headquarters about 3 years ago on a mission. Lucy awoke slowly, she didn't recognize her surroundings. She pulled at her wrists, finding them bound behind her back. Where am I? What is this? From the metal door she heard a snicker. So you're awake, Hertfilia-sama. I am Master Oze, a Phantom Lord. Phantom. Lucy yelled. Oh right, I got captured, she thought. A centipede climbed over her foot. Hiya. She yelled as comical tears spurted from her eyes. Oze folded his arms. Yes, this jail is quite filthy. If you cooperate with us, then we can treat you as a VIP, rather than a simple captive. Lucy ignored the gesture on Timmy. She ordered, but I was meant to capture you, daughter of the Hertfilia conglomerate, Lucy Hertfilia-sama. Lucy stared at him. So you kidnapped me? Oh no dear, this was a request of your father. Lucy trembled and looked down for a moment. No, he wouldn't bother with that. She lifted her head. I won't go back. Sorry dear, that's my job, Lucy glared at him. Then why did you destroy the guild? Oze laughed slightly and snarled at her. That was just a bonus. She frowned deeply. Release Ma at once, I cannot do that. A small blush crept over her cheeks. I need to use the restroom, Oze pointed to a bucket in the corner of the room. Such a classic trick, go ahead. She got up and fiddled with her skirt. A bucket, huh? Oze's face contorted and he turned around. Such a shameless lady. Lucy smirked and kicked him where it hurts hard enough to make the balls pop. Nepe, he screamed and fell holding his crotch. Lucy swiftly made it to the window but stopped and looked down. Oze laughed though he was sweating from pain. Pity isn't it, this is our sky prison. He struggled to get up. Lucy turned to him. Come to me, it's punishment time. She thought about her father, scrunched her eyes tightly, and fell backwards. What? Oze yelled and fell back down. She neared the ground at high speeds. Something grabbed her feet. Lucy, you're heavy, the strained voice of the blue cat announced. She felt her wrists become free and quickly held her skirt up. Happy placed her down. Thank you, Happy, she said quietly. Natsu stood staring up at the cell from which she fell. He suddenly smelt salt. Sorry, Lucy said. I'm sorry. She thought about everything that happened. It's all my fault. Her terms became heavy, but I still want to stay in the guild. I love fairy tale. Lucy rubbed her eyes. Lucy? Happy asked but received no answer. Natsu, let's go back. Natsu nodded and began to walk away. Oze stumbled through the hallway and fell again. He grit his teeth and the walls began to crack. You will pay, a little bitch. Makarov lay sweating on a bed while an old woman with pink hair tended to him. Suddenly she slapped him across the face. Oh oi. Alzak yelled. What are you doing? Biska asked. Perusica can't spell her name, huffed. He rushed into battle without considering his age. Look at him now. The fool. She turned around agitated. And how long do you intend to stay here? I hate humans. Both mages' voices wavered. With the master in this condition, Alzak said, how could we leave? Biska finished. Perusica turned back around. Your worried faces only made his condition worse. Drain was used on him. It depletes the darkest magic. Once the magic is drained, it floats in the air and eventually disappears. If we could gather it, we could heal him faster, but it's too late now. The two were silent. What are you still doing here? You stink. Perusica yelled, waving a broom that somehow appeared in her hands. Hirek. Please excuse us. The two yelled as they escaped. The old woman stared after them for a while with sad eyes. She turned her face to Makarova. You really are a fool. Ouch, Nab said as someone bandaged his arm. I can't believe we had to retreat. One mage yelled. So degrading, another added. Damn it. Was one random exclamation. Lucy sat on a stool looking sadly at her injured guildmates. By a table people were making plans, others gathered lacrima bombs and magic sheets. Lucy trembled. What's wrong? Still worried? Gray asked but received no answer. I'm sorry, she finally said. Why were you hiding? Happy asked. She chose not to answer. I ran away a year ago and only now he wants me back. He's horrible. Though my selfish actions caused this. No, it's your dad who caused this, Elfman said, only to be punched by Gray. If I go home everything will go back to normal. Are you an idiot? Everyone glared at Natsu, who was casually leaning on the wall. You honestly think that Phantom will stop attacking us if you leave? You must think really highly of yourself. Insults crashed down on him, but he paid no mind. What kind of life would you live if you went back to a place you hate to stay here in the place you love? Happy crashed into his face. You actually care? Natsu sighed. No. If I cared I would have tried to make her feel better. I was only stating facts. People had stopped yelling at him and Lucy thought about what he had said and began to cry. Gah. You idiot, you made her cry. Like stared at her from afar. Kana groaned. I can't find Misty Gun anywhere. She yelled, throwing her cards about. Warahan nodded and turned to the Lacrima in front of her. Laxus, please come, master is injured, and as you heard we can't find Misty Gun. Laxus snorted. That shit doesn't concern me, take care of it yourself. Kana was about to yell at him when Mira started talking to Lucy, our comrade is being targeted. Laxus laughed, the newbie with big boobs. Tell her if she becomes my woman I'll come. He looks Mira up and down. Better, yet why don't you strip for me? I'm weak to why. The Lacrima suddenly shattered, Mira. Kana whispered. Forget him, I'm fighting next. Kana grabbed her shoulder. No. Even though you're a former S-class mage you can't fight in your condition. Mira let tears fall and didn't answer. Urza let water run down her face, she hit her just to the wall, blaming herself for the incident with her master. Suddenly she heard a loud noise coming from outside. Alzak suddenly yelled. They filed out onto the beach and gaped. The fuck is that? Natsu mumbled, staring at the guild that was walking in the ocean. Steam pushed from its engines as it stopped a few meters from the shore. Ira stood on the beach in a towel, staring in shock like the others. Prepare Jupiter, Oze ordered. Veins popped on his head and a large cannon lengthened out from the guild's lower middle. Looks like a obliterate, he growled. This is bad, everyone down. Ira yelled. Fairy tale, he finished. Everyone get down. Urza ordered her to walk forward and dropped her towel. Re-equip. Her body was covered with a full body spiked armor, Herculean armor. No Urza, you'll die. Not even that armor can protect you. Natsu stood next to her, simply staring at the cannon as it charged. Natsu helped her, Gray yelled. Natsu's side glanced at him. She can block the attack better than I. My shells are weak. She'll die. Gray retorted. Get down. Urza repeated. Destroying them, Oze growled, and the cannon blasted. It seemed like slow motion as all mages either ran or threw themselves down. Ira poised herself for the onslaught. Gray kept forward and pushed Natsu towards the blast. What the fuck, Gray? In surprise the fire mage stumbled sideways, knocking Urza out of the way. Haim sped back up when the magic beam slammed into him. Natsu was pushed back and dug his feet into the sand, his arms stretched out for a last-minute shell spell. He felt his magic drain, not prone to using shields. The beam tore at his arms, forming lacerations. A second before the blast stopped, Natsu's spell dropped, and he was thrown backwards into the already damaged guild. Lucy gaped like most others. A chuckle came from the walking guild. What great friends you all are, Oze mocked darkly. Natsu. Happy yelled, flying off into the ruble. The feline nearly got hit by some bricks as the now enraged mage got up. Blood ran from deep slashes on his arms. He gave Gray a look that promised future pain. You were lucky, Oze said. This is your last chance. Hand over Lucy now. Natsu was forgotten. TT, you're crazy. Elzak yelled. Lucy is our comrade, Makeo added, and we'd never sell out our comrades. Biska finished. More words of protest followed and Lucy began to tremble. Hand her over, Oze ordered, and Lucy put a hand over her eyes. We'd rather die. Urza screamed, dropping her armor. Fairy Tale roared, agreeing with her. Our answer won't change no matter what. Gray voiced confidently. I see, Oze said quietly, then we'll load a bigger and stronger Jupiter. Grovel in fear for 15 minutes as it loads. Gray momentarily forgot how he almost killed Natsu and turned to the fire mage. Okay, can you? He saw the look in the teen's eyes and turned to Ira instead. Ira, can you block the next one? Just as she nodded, strange robbed figures exited the mobile guild. What, soldiers? They're not planning to just fire Jupiter. No mercy, several images exclaimed. Feel pain, Fairy Tale. You have two choices. Oze ran to die by my shoulders or by Jupiter. Some mages laughed nervously. He's bluffing, he wouldn't shoot his own men. One said. Kana shook her head. No, this is simply magic called shade. These are just ghost men that Oze created. Urza said she would block the cannon, but still. Suddenly Happy came flying above their heads carrying Natsu. Natsu will take care of it, the cat said, and continued to the mobile guild. Elfman and I will go as well. Gray said. Ira grabbed his shoulder. Apologize to him, you know what you did was wrong. Gray didn't respond, only charged after the albino in front of him. Loke and I will strengthen defense here. Anna yelled and nodded in agreement. Mira grabbed Lucy's hand. Come this way. Lucy snatched her hand back. No. I have to fight. This is my fault after all. Mira looked at her sternly. Nobody thinks it is. We are all proud of this war. So please listen to me. Lucy looked down. Mira suddenly placed her hand on the blonde's face. Lucy collapses. Riitas takes Lucy to the hideout. Mira ordered Kwai. Riitas replied, drawing a carriage on his stomach. He placed two hands out and the painting materialized in front of him. He picked Lucy up and sped away. Mira watched him before changing her appearance to look like Lucy. Natsu punched the Jupiter cannon, leaving a dent, one of many. This will take too long, he muttered. Should we try the inside? Happy asked. Natsu nodded and crawled into it. They came to a room with a large black lacrima at its center, hooked up to tubes that ran into the rest of the guild. That lacrima sends compressed magic instead of bullets. Happy said. Natsu raised an eyebrow. I didn't ask if there was an award. Silence. Well, all I have to do is pretend that it's gray and pummeled it into oblivion, Natsu said. I won't let you hear someone voice across the room. Oh, a guard, Natsu said, rushing forward with a flaming fist. For some reason he ended up punching himself, though it didn't hurt. He fell to the ground. What the heck, Natsu? Happy yelled. Natsu got back up and rubbed one of the injuries on his arm. The man he aimed to attack stood confidently. So, you're the one getting in our way. Elzak and Biska stood back to back shooting the shoulders. Max held a hand out and used sand to knock a group of the creations backwards. One got through his fence and stood behind him. Kana quickly tossed some cards at it and the being dispersed into smoke. Protect the guild. She yelled at him. Sorry Kana, he apologized. Don't let these scum take over our guild. Mira watched from the guild window, the one that's not destroyed. 9 minutes until Jupiter fires, she thought. Moving, Natsu said, or do you need a push? The guard held his head up with a look of arrogance. I sighed he wouldn't let you. Natsu rolled his eyes. I don't have time for your slow talk, get out of my way. He launched forward, fist covered in flames, only to punch himself again. Natsu, I thought you were smart. Happy sighed. Natsu tried again, but was twisted up into a fiery tornado and sent into the ground. Natsu stops being an idiot and destroys the lacrima. Happy fuss. I am Totemaru. The guard said all flames are controlled by me. Natsu, still laying on the ground, held his head in one hand and waved the other dismissively. Nobody cares who you are, and why do all you villains spout your occupation and plans when no one gives a damn? Happy snickered, but then gasped as the large lacrima changed color and sparks began to fly around at Natsu. He yelled. Blue fire. Totemaru announced as said flames engulfed Natsu. He simply sucked them in and felt his magic begin to refuel. Cold flames, interesting. Ah, so you're the rumored flame dragon slayer. I guess neither of us will be harmed in this fight, Totemaru mused. Natsu folded his arms. And do tell why you came to that conclusion. Totemaru smiled. No flames can reach me. Natsu raised an eyebrow, but if they do I can beat you easily. Happy felt like tearing his fur out. Natsu just used hand-to-hand combat. Natsu glanced at the feline and puffed out his cheeks. Fire dragons. Totemaru held out his hand smugly, thinking he was going to spew flames. Spit. Natsu's saliva ran down Totemaru's face. Natsu defeated him now. Happy flew around sporadically. Orange fire. Toto yelled angrily, wiping his face. Natsu dodged it. That smells like crap. Toto laughed. Exactly. Natsu rushed forward and got a good punch on Toto's face. The other man etched, trying to win with only your fits. Well, how about I use my sword? Natsu dodged the sharp object and went for his third and fourth. Flaming punch. Like the others, his fist went to his face, but he expanded the flames and engulfed Totemaru as well. Jupiter is about to fire. Don't tell me that brat betrayed us. Mira watched with folded arms. 2 more minutes, she thought. Natsu stood harmed but low on magic as Totemaru struggled to rise. The enemy's skin was severely chapped and cracked in some places. Bastard. He expanded the flames to hit me as well. The lacrima got brighter and the wind began to pick up. Natsu. Happy panicked. Said Slayer was forming a large ball of fire in one hand. I doubt I'll have to fight anymore after this. Might as well give a show, he thought. Totemaru leaped back. I'm not falling for that. He held out a hand, but the flames wouldn't budge. The pressure in the room became heavy and Happy played on the floor, still panicking. Natsu. Natsu thrust his fist forward, but Toto dodged at the last minute, only getting his jacket burned. Ha. You missed it. He mocked just before the lacrima was destroyed. As smoke cleared, it revealed Natsu wiping his hands. I wasn't aiming at you in any way. Fire shot out from the cannon as it fell from the guild and landed in the sea. He did it. Yay, we're not gonna die. The mages cheered more for their lives than the fact that Natsu saved them. Natsu looked down at Totemaru, said mage shook from fear at the look he was receiving. Master, you never. Clenched his fists in rage. Those disgusting brats, he said quietly. Natsu's posture slumped slightly as he continued to watch Totemaru, said Phantom Mage glared back holding his sword with injured arms. Speaking of which, Natsu's injuries were beginning to irritate him. Shit, he thought, I really can't fight anymore, not like this. Suddenly the structure began to shake and turn. What? This room has no means of staying horizontal. Toto complained. Boshai, the room tilted sharply and Natsu instantly felt nauseous. Happy used his wings in order to stay upright. Phantom Lord's legs came back into action as it lifted the guild building up. What are they planning now? It tilted back and gears began to move. Sections around larger pieces emerged and the entire fortress transformed into a giant robot-like thing. A super mage Phantom MK. 11 Totemaru snickered. What is that? Now what are they doing? It began to walk towards them. No, it's going to trample the guild. Kana grit her teeth. Concentrate on the task at hand. Gray and Elfman or even Natsu will stop this for us. Natsu rolled on the ground groaning. What's wrong with this guy? Totemaru thought. Natsu got up. Come on. Natsu held his mouth. Is this thing moving? Totemaru gaped. Motion sickness lame. An assortment of flaming colors bloomed in his hands. "So fire doesn't affect you?" The small embers exploded into a blazing rainbow above Toto's head. "Well, I wonder what would happen if you ate all of this." Natsu looked back momentarily and gave Toto an annoyed look. "Eat this." Toto yelled as he thrust his hands down. Suddenly his arms were covered in ice. It slowly covered his body. "What is this?" A large monster arm grabbed his now frozen body and flung him out from a random hole in the ceiling. "What the heck is wrong with you?" Gray asked men not to get sick. Elfman added. "Wait." They both looked at him. "Can you not handle vehicles?" Natsu glared at him and was about to retort when the robot thing stopped walking. Happy rushed out to see what was happening. The robot held up its arms and began to write symbols in the air. "This writing is..." Alzak began. "It's a seal." "Abyss break." Kana finished. "What?" Everyone yelled. "Shit, if that goes off it'll destroy everything to Chaldea Cathedral, wherever that is," Loke grunted. Happy's fur became damp with sweat and he rushed back down to the others. Natsu had his hands folded over the lower part of his face and was glaring at Gray with heated anger. If looks could kill, Gray would be splattered all over the walls. "This is bad." Happy yelled. "The guild has turned into a giant robot thing and is casting a spell they say will reach all the way to Chaldea Cathedral. That's half the town." Gray exclaimed, trying to ignore the death glare he was receiving. All three looked at each other and then ran off in opposite directions. "We need to stop it," they said. Mira rushed out from the guild. "Mira." Kana yelled. "Marahin, get back." Ira whispered in order not to attract attention. "No, I must buy us some time," she replied. She reached the front and held her arms out. "You want me, right? Please stop attacking the guild." There was a small silence before Oze spoke. "Disappear, filthy impostor," he said. Sweat ran down Mira's face. "What?" Oze snarled. "There is no way a targeted person would be sent to the front lines." Tears gathered in Mira's eyes. "I'm completely worthless," she thought. Elfam ran down a long corridor. "I'm Elfman, mage of fairy tale," he yelled. "But seriously, this room is ridiculous." He had been running for 10 minutes. The floor behind him began to rise from it. Was Soul, but not with his usual kind, but annoying, smile. His face was dark and twisted with a cruel smirk on his face. His voice became low, smooth, and slow. "Salad," was all he said. "Maybe we should run for it," a mage suggested. Kana sent him a glare. "Would you really leave the guild and the city behind?" The other mage stuttered but replied no. Kana continued, "We have to rely on those still in the fortress. They will save all of us." Mira stood sadly in the front lines with a hand on her chest. "Elfman should know that he's in no condition to fight," she thought. She looked up in surprise when she noticed a shadow above her. She was grabbed tightly by the robot's hand. Her fellow guild members screamed her name in worry. Mira was held by two of the overly large fingers as pressure was placed on her body. "Trying to deceive me? I don't think I like you, little girl." Oze was smiling sadistically. "I'll just smash you to pieces." Kana was held back by other mages as she struggled to get to Mira. "Elfman, Gray, please stop this thing." Soul bent even further to the left, almost touching the floor. "Great, you'll be the one to tell me how to disable this crap," Elfman said, ripping off his coat. He held his arm out and the skin rippled, then turned black. "Black bull, cow," Elfman said. Soul waved around like a demented noodle. "So the rumors were true," he said. Elfman must have looked confused because Soul continued his annoying rant. "I know many things about you and your guild members. Things you'd rather keep secret." His voice turned dark as he spoke the last sentence. Elfman lunged forward attempting to punch the Frenchman. "Shut up," he yelled as Soul dodged. Soul ignored the request and added one last comment. "If my memory is correct, then I believe that you had a younger sister, Non." In shock, Elfman was unable to dodge the next attack. "Isabel dance." Soul sand as he covered his opponent and missed, blocking his view. "Shit, where is he?" Elfman growled. Soul twisted in the air like a retarded ballerina and then posed like a rejected model. "Roche Concerto," he yelled. Chunks of rock hailed down on the takeover mage. "Gra!" Elfman yelled as he flew backwards. He landed on one knee, head down, blood dripping to the floor. Yes, some time back you performed a full body takeover but went on a rampage, killing your youngest sibling in the process. The trauma has prevented you from performing a full talk ever since." Elfman was silent but raised his head. Blood dripped from his mouth and forehead. Elfman's arm changed again to Iron Bull, cow. His arm looked like 3 large chunks of metal. He punched at Soul, but the annoyance ducked into the floor and came up behind him. Soul wrapped himself around the fairy's arm like a twin. "Salute," he said, tilting his head. "Why don't you get off me, Monsieur Soul?" Elfman yelled, pulling at the strange man's flesh. "It's Monsieur actually," Soul corrected him. Soul rematerialized and kicked Elfman down. Another kick sent the bulky teen across the floor. "Are we finished?" Monsieur had his hands in his pockets and was practically laughing. Elfman growled as he got back up. "This guy is stronger than he looks, TT," he thought, wiping his face. He took a stance. Soul wobbled. "I have no choice but to do this," Elfman thought. His skin rippled and suddenly the image of his sister's smiling face entered his mind. The skin began to smoke, and Elfman yelled from pain, then fell to his knees. Somehow his injuries disappear. Check the menu chap 55 page 10 and you'll see what I mean. Soul took this chance to rush forward. Do not attempt the impossible. Voila. Injuries return, Soul kicked Elfman in the stomach disabling him. Said mage coughed blood, PLA Sonata. Soul continued his assault, a giant plaster fist smashed into the talk over mage's face. His body opened a hole to the outside. Soul snickered. This is the power of the element 4. Elfman's eyes slowly opened to the sight of his older sister trapped between the robot's 2 fingers. Elfman, she stuttered under the pressure. Nissan. Elfman yelled in horror. Oh, your older sister, yes, she is being crushed. What a shame she has such a pretty face. Too bad she has lost most of her magical power and can't escape. Non. Tears entered Mira's eyes. Run, she said. Soul jumped onto Elfman's head. Such a pity to lose both your sisters before your very eyes. Mira's tears flowed faster. Please just run. Elfman struggled to raise his head. Nissan, I promised to never let you cry, so why are you weeping? Anger coursed through him as he jerked upwards, knocking Soul away. Who made you cry? Elfman tried again with the full body takeover. No, you mustn't, you'll lose control. Mira wept. She's right, Soul mocked. The memory of all his siblings together flitted before his eyes. Lidsana died because I was too weak. He mumbled. No, that's not true. Mira screamed painfully at him. Her brother looked up. I don't want that to happen again. I will become the strong man that can protect you. Mira went to speak but was nearly crushed by the pressure of the metal fingers. Let Nissan go. Elfman screamed, his skin bulked and darkened, his eyes turned yellow, he grew horns, his legs resembled that of a deer's, and his hair spiked backwards. This is Soul had waterfalls coming off his face. Marahin looked on in worry. Full body takeover, beast Soul. Soul shivered. Mira was shocked but happy, though she worried if Elfman had control or not. Soul found himself lying backwards after taking multiple face jabs. Elfman caught him in the air and brutally smashed his face, but he still wasn't done. Lucy fell off the ladder. Good, oh, she complained. Oh, are you okay? Mira asked worriedly. Lucy nodded, rubbing her back. Yes, I'm good. She began to pick up all of the books she dropped when she came across a photo. Hey, what's this? Mira crouched beside her. That takes me back. I think it was 6 years ago. On the parchment were all the fairy tale members but younger. Most of them in the background along with Makarov, but Laxa sat to the side. Mira leaned against a table next to Grey half naked, and Kana, seemingly normal Mira, was wearing booty shorts and a short tank top. Elfman was sitting behind another white-haired girl that Lucy didn't recognize and looked like a softie, smiling like a goofball. He was wearing a suit. The younger girl was wearing a red dress and matching shoes. She was jumping for joy. It seemed Ira was wearing a more childlike version of her current clothes with arms crossed and a smile on her face. In the very center was Natsu sitting on a blue dragon. He wasn't smiling but looked pleased. He was wearing black shoes, black shorts with blue seams, and a red and black striped shirt. Somehow he's being colorful, along with his scarf of course. Everyone looked happy, yes, even Laxus. Time travel. I found an egg, Natsu said, simply holding out the abnormally large product in front of Makarov. Said Old Master looked down from his spot at the bar quizzically. And where on earth did you find that, he asked hesitantly, expecting to hear how the boy killed a species of monster. In the forest to the east was the response he received but got no elaboration, so he had to hope nothing in the area would go out of balance. An egg. Let me eat some. Gray said. He was lounging on a chair. Gray, your clothes, Connor reminded him. I'm not going to eat it. Natsu said. What? Why? Did Gray glared at him. A dragon will come out of it. Some mages rolled their eyes and laughed at him. What makes you think that, Dumbus? Gray asked. Natsu ignored all of the negativity directed at him and pointed to a mark on his find. This looks like a dragon's claw. Makarov, can I hatch it? He asked, blocking out the retorts of the idiot and stupid coming behind him. The master sent the others a stern look before replying. There is no magic in the world to create life. Life is a force born of love. No magic can hope to match it. Natsu stared at him. The frank old man, you never answer my questions. Makarov's sweat dropped. Perhaps you're still too young. He means if you want to hatch that thing you'll have to use your own skills. It might be good for you, maybe you learn to be a good person instead of the heartless jerk you are now. Bray paled. Oh, Ira, you're back. Natsu glared slightly. Look who's calling heartless, he thought. Oh, Urs is back, Marahin said. Then let's pick off where we last started. Elfman frowned. Nissan, he mumbled weakly. Fighting again, Lasana said disapprovingly. The red-haired and white-haired girl brawled with each other, yelling threats and insults. Chi, Natsu said, placing his egg down. Natsu, can I help you hatch your egg? Lasana asked sweetly. Sure, Natsu said, only half listening. She called her hands. Then let's warm it up. Natsu glanced at her, then at the egg I saw. He opened his mouth and let out a torrent of fire. No, Natsu, you'll burn it. Lysana cried. Oh. She signed and held her arms out. Let me take care of this. Take over, animal soul. She changed into a large bird and sat over the egg. See, I'm like a mother when she praised herself. Yes, that was smart of you, Natsu complimented. Some members frowned at her clothes. Lasaba being with a problem child. Elfman sighed sadly. What, am I the only one of my siblings that can't perform a full body takeover, he said quietly. Few days later. Macau and Wakaba sat drinking at a table. Natsu is still trying to hatch that egg, Macau said. The brat still thinks that a dragon will come out. Ha. There's no such thing as Wakaba being mocked. Macau sighed and he dragged Lysana with him, a bad influence if you ask me. Marahin suddenly chopped their table in half. The hell. She yelled, she's hanging out with him. How dare she? What is she doing with him? Natsu, what's wrong? Lysana asked while holding the egg, said the boy hummed, I think someone is planning to kill me. Lysana huffed. Not again, he sighed and put his head in his hands. Yeah, thanks for the hut, by the way. He changed the subject. Lysana beamed. You're welcome. Her mood suddenly turned sad. Mirani told me that you live by yourself. He glanced at her. Yeah, what do you do for food? I hunt. Isn't that dangerous? Simply walking the streets is dangerous. Lysana huffed, but then brightened. I can cook for you. Natsu cocked his head. Lysana pretends like he had asked her a question. I can't cook as good as Mirani, though. She's been feeding you puppies. Lysana balked but then saw the amusement in Natsu's eyes and huffed again. Elf Naichin cooks most of the time. You've been getting 5-star food. She smiled at him then blinked when he snatched the egg. You're not gonna cook it though. Hard eyes stared at her, but she was used to it. It hurts that you would think that she criticized. I'm looking forward to seeing it hatch as well. His eyes softened as he hugged the egg. Soon we'll have another friend and I won't let it disappear. Listen, rubbed the white fairy tale stamp on her shoulder. You know, Natsu, even though you're cold and negative most of the time, you can be extremely sweet. His eyes twitched. I'm a very warm and positive person. Thank you very much. She held her mouth trying not to laugh and a vein popped on his forehead. After she calmed down, Lysana began to rock back and forth. Maybe when we're older we can get married. He stared at her. You're delusional. Gay, you always say that. The egg wobbled and disrupted them. Oh, it made a sound. Lysana cheered. It might hatch soon. Natsu seemed mildly excited. We'll stay overnight to watch over it. Right, Natsu? She turned to look at him, but he was already sleeping. Gosh, you're so lazy. The next morning Lysana woke to Natsu's enraged face. The egg was gone. At the guild, Natsu openly glared at everybody who took my egg. Gray glared back. Jish, calm down. Kana waved her hand. Don't look at me. Natsu turned. Laxus, shut up. His mood darkened when Urzago complained to someone else. Lysana looked up at her sister. Have you seen Mirani? The eldest Strauss sister shrugged. Are you sure Natsu didn't eat it? She smirked but then found herself flying across the guild. I'm sorry, Mira, could you repeat that? Natsu asked dangerously. Oi, stop that, Elfman said. I didn't mean to steal it, he said as he placed the egg down. I kept it warm at home. Natsu's mood went back to neutral. You totally thought it was me, Mira directed at Ira, who retorted like you didn't think it was me. Before a fight could start, the egg cracked and all guild members gathered. It's hatching, Lysana squealed. The egg popped open and a blue cat flew out. A cat. All the adults yelled oh. Natsu said as it fluttered clumsily over to him. It's got wings, a bird. Nah, definitely a blue cat. It landed on Natsu's head and yelled I. Of course it can talk. Cute, listen, yipped. Natsu lifted the creature from his head. Look, little guy, because of you everyone is happy. Lysana cooed to the feline. Natsu glanced at the smile surrounding his happiness. He looked at Lysana and Makarov, then thought about his family. Let's name him Happy. Man, Mira mumbled as her brother continued to destroy Soul's originally ugly face. Oh, Elfman, can you hear me? Soul was kicked from the building down to the ocean. Elfman then leaped towards his sister. Have you lost yourself again? She flinched when he reached for her, but was surprised by the pressure from the robot's figures. I'm sorry, Mirani had a distorted voice. I know you wouldn't want to see this face again, not after Mira shushed him. It wasn't your fault that Lysana died. Even then you were just trying to protect us. Elfman changed back to his human self. I couldn't protect her. He nearly cried. But you protected me. Mira hugged him. We promised to live our lives to the fullest, for her sake. Tears rushing down Elfman's face. Why yeah. Then they both abruptly noticed that he was then drawing the seal at a slower pace. It slowed down. I wonder why. Marahin began calculating in her mind when she came to a conclusion. The source of this thing's power is the element 4. She yelled, if we can defeat them all we can stop the spell. Natsu rushed hurriedly down a hall. The gashes on his arm were irritating him. He lit a finger on fire and wrote a circular seal on the wall. The area contained in the seal disappeared into a purple abyss. He fished around until he found some medical supplies and wrapped his arms. Are you okay with Natsu? Happy asked. You look kind of tired. Natsu nodded, then closed the hole, erasing his seal. I'll be fine as long as we don't encounter any more enemies. Happy didn't look convinced, but followed his adoptive father as he continued on. How sad, someone said. Fuck, Natsu thought. It's one of Element 4. Happy to inform you that I am Arya, the pinnacle of Element 4. I have come to slay the dragon. Bray climbed through a skylight, instantly becoming soaked. Wait, was it raining when I got in here? He asked himself, looking up at the gray sky. TT. Drip drip drop came from a woman's voice. There, standing across the platform, was a young blue-haired female with an umbrella. She, for unknown reasons, was also wearing a British guard hat. UK, you know what I mean. Yes, Juvia, the rain woman. One of the Element 4. She seemed to be talking to herself. It surprises Juvia that you were able to defeat 2 of the elements, but Juvia and Arya are not to be taken lightly. It doesn't matter if you are a woman or child. Grey half glared. I won't forgive anyone who hurts my nakama. Oh, so that gives you the right to push Natsu into a death blast. I see how it is. I got you. Juvia stared at him for a while, then suddenly blushed. Yes, you have some this battle, she said as she walked away. What the hell is that? Grey yelled comically. Wait up. You can stop this giant. Juvia gripped the cloth over her chest. What is this? She asked herself. This strange pitter-patter in the chest. With a still red face, she turned back to face him. I must make him mine. Water lock. Grey was suspended in a sphere of water. Ugh was the noise he made as an injury from Galuna Island reopened and changed the water red. How did Juvia injure you? She gasped in worry. The sphere then turned into a ball of ice and shattered. Juvia was sure her spell could not be broken. Is this some sort of fate, Juvia thought, eyes sparkling. Bray held the injury on his side and stripped his short, revealing bandages. Why is he stripping? Juvia screamed in her mind. Her face resembled a tomato. Ice make. Lance. Grey abruptly yelled. The projectile surprised Juvia and she was unable to dodge. They impaled her and for an instant Grey thought she had died. Instead, the edges of the multiple holes in her body closed in. She looked down solemnly. Juvia's body is formed from the rain itself. She mumbled that while Grey seemed amazed. I forgot this man is my enemy. She suddenly looked up. Farewell, my sweet flower of love. Water slicer. What the hell are you babbling about? Grey said, dodging. Ice make. Battle axe. He slashed her in half only for her body to reform. There is still time to save you, Juvia spoke. If you bring me Lucy, I can put a ward in for Master Oze to spare you. Grey snarled. Lucy is my. I wouldn't give her up even if I died. Juvia looked heartbroken, then depressed, then furious. She began to boil as she threw her hat and umbrella down. Someone dared steal this man from me. Love rivals. Steam began to clod the air. Juvia will never forgive Lucy. And the devil's child was born. Juvia screamed in rage, then suddenly spread towards Grey as a wave of hot water. Shit, boiling water, he cursed. He went to make the ice pose, but had to dodge the bubbling mad woman repeatedly. Too fast, he growled. I need to buy myself some time. He jumped down a skylight, raising his arms to protect himself from glass shards. The water followed. When his feet touched the floor, he instantly whipped around. Ice make. Shield. A barrier of ice formed above him, but the water began to melt through. My jealousy is boiling. Juvia screamed as she drenched her crush in heat. Grey screamed as his skin burned. The tidal wave became unbelievably large, and Grey was swept back up to the roof. Bastard. If only I had something to freeze. Suspended in air, Grey looked down at the incoming assault and thrust a hand down, grabbing Juvia. Freeze. He yelled, and the boiling water spiked into a cone of sword-like ice. And my boiling water is freezing. Juvia screamed in confusion, and not only that. A blush ounce again covered her face as she realized that Grey was groping her breast. He yelled and pulled his hand back. Juvia blinked in surprise and stared at him. Tears filled her eyes, and as a response rain pelted down. He released Juvia from the ice. So kind. Grey avoided her gaze. Do over, he stuttered. The rain woman frowned and stood from where she fell. No, I cannot hurt you. Grey pushed his damp bangs from his eyes. You mean that you've given up? He asked. Juvia ignored the question. Juvia is stronger than Lucy, so is happy. She can protect you. Grey tilted his head. But why would you? Juvia looked down. It is because. Juvia low, she low, the rain droned out her voice. This is so annoying. She squeaked. Grey wiped his face. Did the rain just get harder? It's so depressing. Juvia gaped, then looked down in sadness. Once again her mellow mood turned into boiling fury as she screamed, you're just like them. Fine, let's do this. Grey growled, the water surrounding him blowing him back. He went to freeze it, but was shocked it's hotter than before. Sad memories filled Juvia's mind, people who disliked her since she always seemed to bring rain. Grey was thrown from the tidal wave and landed on the roof with a thud. The mass flipped around and came down towards him. He raised a hand directly above his head and attempted to freeze the water again. I won't lose to a phantom mage. A large wave of magical power pulsed from him, so cold even the rain froze. Ice geyser. Once again Juvia was frozen with a shocked expression on her immobile face. The ice shattered and she fell on her back gazing up at the clouded sky. You seem to have finally cooled off, Gray almost laughed. Juvia didn't answer, only stared in fascination as the clouds began to part. Oh, it finally cleared up. Gray exclaimed, the blue note was amazed. So beautiful. The ice mage smiled at her, the sun highlighted his face and made his eyes sparkle. So, you want to continue? Juvia's eyes turned to hearts as she fainted, looking unnaturally happy. Gray stares down in confusion at the unconscious woman. That's a creepy smile. Or someone called out to him. Gray turned elf-man. What is Mira-chan doing here? The siblings disregarded his questions and bombarded him with a brief overlook of their current situation. Despite being dizzy from the sudden flood of information, Gray nodded and began to form a plan. So we can still make it. Mira proclaimed confidently, we will definitely win. I'm definitely about to die. Were the thoughts going through Natsu Dragnil's head? Well, that and the thoughts of strangling Gray for indirectly putting him in the current situation. Arya toward him. It had not been but 10 minutes and due to the Dragon Slayer's magic reduction, Arya had multiplied the amount of injuries on his body. The sad thing is he's not even that strong, he grumbled eternally. Right, the rosy-haired mage was in a worse mood than before. He had cooled off from being splattered with innards the day before. And was okay with knowing how he would kill Gray later, but the current bastard in front of him renewed all anger and utter frustration. It's impressive that you can still stand. Certainly not want to look down on, Arya mused half-heartedly. Pappy whimpered from behind a pillar. Natsu lit his fist aflame. A pitiful bright orange, he ran forward trying to find a fault in the opponent's stance. Ari thrust a palm out, and the sensation of Urza hitting him in the chin with a magically enhanced sledgehammer sent him stumbling backwards. Still standing, Arya noted with a bored tone airspace. A barrage of random hits caused Natsu to flip through the air. He rubbed a bruise. I don't have the patience for this, he muttered. Fire Dragon's roar. He used up the little bit of magic he had left as he shot a medium-sized colon of fire at Arya. The man disappeared on impact. Natsu whipped around but was suddenly caught in a magic spell. Meet the fate of your master, ere the feeling of having knives being ripped from your pores encased Natsu. He was too proud to scream. So sad, Arya said, but it was almost as if he was laughing. That is until the red aura trickling from Natsu's body suddenly turned black and ran fast like a river. In the back of Arya's mind he heard a sinister laugh. Before he could register the phenomenon, the airspace mage now found himself laying on his back. Urza glared down at Hit. Are you the one that hurt master? Her voice came like a growl. Urzaya. Happy cheered with over-dramatic tears in his eyes. Help that guy beat up Natsu. Said mage rolled his eyes trying to conceal the black presence surrounding him, though Urza was too angry to notice. Her eyes widened slightly. How strong is he? Weak came Natsu's curt answer. Arya frowned at the insult. Urza turned back. Then how? You know very well how. Urza whipped back to the obstacle, realizing what he meant. Not understanding the situation, Arya raised his hands to his face. Well, if I'm going against the mighty Titania, I should take this seriously. Natsu showed no external reaction to the returned insult. His eyes? Gray asked, running along with the Strauss siblings. Mira nodded. They're a way to keep his power in check. If he takes the blindfold off, we may lose our only chance in this war. Arya smiled maliciously. Come at me, Urza. Bro, the air is wiped around, causing dust to rise. I've activated Airspace Zero, magic that consumes all life. A sudden pulse of pressure forced Happy to wrap all bendable appendages around Natsu's neck, successfully choking him. Urza snarled. How could you kill so easily? She raged and rushed forward. Arya laughed. How would you survive this airspace? Mounds of magic flew at Urza as deadly projectiles. She re-equipped a sword and sliced through them. Her clothes disappear and her knight armor to place Tenrin Blumendlid. She's lived at Arya repeatedly before kicking him to the ground. Master would have never lost to the likes of you. The tale will never appear in your saga. Duck. Max yelled as the abyss break symbol began to glow. Others ignored his plea and instead began to run. Kana went to flee as well when she noticed something strange. An arm on the Phantom Guild suddenly broke off. Its destruction was followed by other mechanical parts. The fairy mages stopped running and watched the magic seal dissipate. They did it, Kana whispered as her guildmates cheered. Natsu wobbled slightly as the upper building fell. Finally, I could just lay down. Urza stood straight and returned to her original armor. What's this? Gray asked, dodging chunks off stone. Did Natsu defeat him? Elfman asked. We did it, the abyss break has been averted. Mira Jane cheered, clapping her hands. Totemaru lay first down in the ocean. Sol was a bloody pulp on the lower level, Juvia was unconscious on the roof, and Arya was mutilated in a separate hall. Impossible. Oze screeched. That trash managed to defeat my element 4. The crew behind him held their hands up in defense. Sir, we're sure that there's a mistake, sir. Jose clenched his fist. We don't know. I'm right here, mastering a deep voice separated the tension filling the room. The elemental 4 were beaten by trash. I guess that makes them trash as well. Hi. Gadgil was carrying someone under one arm. You should have sent me against them first. He dropped the blonde-headed body. Oh, and here's a gift for you, master. Jose blinked. Lucy. But how? Don't underestimate a dragon's layer's noses. Gih. Natsu sniffed the air. Crap and vanilla. Oh oi, Gadgil. Are you sure she's still alive? A crew member asked, motioning the limp body. Gadgil thought about it for a moment, then kicked Lucy hard in her abdomen. The blonde awoke coughing and spluttering blood. Hey, don't do that. The member said to the mage's action. See, she's fine. Drawn, ignoring the question. Can't be sure about the guy that was with her though. Jose smiled as expected from the strongest gay man in my guild. Very trash. Jose's voice was once again projected from the guild. We have succeeded in our first goal. A pained and high-pitched scream came next. Is that Lucy? What are you doing to her? Mira tried to cover her ears. Stop it. Natsu sighed. I get the feeling that I'm going to be forced to get her. And how in the hell did she get caught again? Jose spoke again. I'm sure you all heard that, but we have one last objective. The ghost's shoulders suddenly multiplied and strengthened. We are going to obliterate all you brats. Fairy Tail was suddenly pushed back by the stronger opponents. Watch over the girl for me, Jose ordered. Gadgil, I will deal with the others myself. Urza growled and went to move when she abruptly paused and fell to the ground. Her abdomen smoked. What? She thought back to the airspace magic. Did I miss one? Natsu ran a hand down his face. Of course she would miss one. And now I have to go get my ass beat because the crappy author of my life won't give me a power-up. You're talking to yourself. Happy started stroking Urza's hair and the weight equipment mage looked up at him with a pained grimace. You have to. I know. Natsu cut her off by holding up one hand and pinching the bridge of his nose with the other. Just stay here, I smell others nearby. He began to walk off calm and happy. Meanwhile, in a small cottage engrafted into a tree, a short old man began to awaken. Natsu walked along the corridors with a blank look on his face. What idiot gets captured by the same person twice, he asked in his mind. I underestimated her stupidity. He stopped when he heard voices from above. Happy noticed as well. He crouched slightly and then leaped into the stone, bringing it up on the other side. As a bonus, he received a mouthful of kunai. Then Natsu, a confused and pained voice, questioned. He ignored it and turned to the larger man, grinning maniacally at him. Finally decided to show up, eh? Natsu sighed. What miracle will save me here? He thought. Happy flew up from the hole he created and began to free Lucy. Gadgil hummed. I don't sense much magic from you. This should be easy. Gihi. Gadgil rushed forward, changing his fist to a metal pole, Iron Dragon's club. His attack was skillfully lodged. Gadgil followed the other's path, Iron Dragon's blade. Natsu dodged again, trying to build up an attack. They both stood a ways from each other, calculating. We already knew that each other were dragon's layers, but I don't know his full power, and he doesn't know mine, Natsu thought. This weakling is only dodging. I can just tire him out and slice him in half simply. Gadgil mused. GG. The Iron Slayer's arms suddenly sprouted claws and sharp metal scales. His speed power increased along with strength and durability. He launched forward with a pinch that forced Natsu to block. What's wrong with him? Lucy, now free, asked. Happy frowned. The Jupiter cannon left him too drained to fight. Lucy fisted her skirt. Gray might have just destroyed our chance of winning. Natsu took an opening and punched Gadgil in the chin. He felt bones crack. Gadgil laughed and raised a hand. He brought it down, but Natsu flipped away, both of their cheeks puffed out. Anti-dragons. Gadgil thought he heard wrong. Iron dragons. Roar. They chorused and let out torrents of magic. Gadgil's iron came like a tornado. Natsu's, instead of warm orange flames, came blue. Not cold like. Totemaru is hotter, stronger, and deadlier. The two breaths twisted in a fight for power, which Natsu successfully won. Lucy gaped. What was that? Happy quickly came up with an excuse. Some fire, he ate. Both fell to the floor along with the unusually quiet bystanders of the evil guild. A large hole rested where Gadgil was rising. Half of his scales looked melted. Natsu grit his teeth, hoping that no one would find any connection with Achnologia from that attack. The wall behind him randomly crumbled, blowing air into his skin. On contact, he realized that the bandages on his arms had ripped off and the lacerations were bleeding again. Natsu's flaming blue fist struck a metal face, while a metal fist met a flaming blue face. The floor crumbled and an explosion sent everyone backwards. The two exchanged blow after blow. Natsu, already weak, was tiring. He couldn't fight using these flames for long, not while the blonde was there. Gadgil linked Natsu's scarf to head, but through the noise he heard a slight tear. Time seemed to slow as the headbutt was returned and Gadgil was rocketed across the room. While the other got up, Natsu checked his scarf. Oh, it was just my shirt, he thought with relief. He felt his body grow heavy, a munching sound came from where fell. That bastard is eating iron, Natsu groaned internally. Lucy realized what was happening when Natsu was sent flying. He needs fire. She looked down sadly, but I lost my keys. She pulled out a lone gold key, a crash almost made her drop it. I have made a contract, but this will have to do. Let's skip the speech. Sagittarius. A man with a horse costume, a bow, and some arrows appeared. Blah blah, I'm getting tired. Get out of my sight, trash. Lucy looked up to see Natsu slide across the floor. His face showed none of the pain he was feeling. He picked a piece of metal from his teeth. TCH still living. Gadgil blinked, then suddenly burst out laughing. Oh look at the scum you're trying to protect. Natsu turned to watch the home of those who hated him crumble. He recalled how each of the others had greeted him with hatred. How his team didn't want him there. Then he remembered Lisanna. She loved that relatively large building. She loved the people, and in her place Natsu would protect them. He turned back to face Gadgil and hefted himself from the floor. And Natsu happy whimpered. There was no progress. Natsu was flung across the room like a ragdoll. Gadgil grinned. You should know I'm not the merciful type. After I rip you a new one, get ready to meet your maker. Happy clenched his fist. If he had some fire, he would definitely kick your ass. The man in the horse costume reached for an arrow. There seems to have been a misunderstanding. He placed the arrow in his bow and pulled. I cannot produce fire, but I can help it generate. Gadgil's hand had twisted into the shape of a sword. Goodbye, salamander. The arrow was released. It zipped past Gadgil's face, distracting him, and hit a large machine. Electricity crackled before exploding into an inferno engulfing them both. Gadgil jumped away and watched as the flames swirled down Natsu's throat. More arrows hit, causing more fire, which was quickly eaten. Thank you, Sagittarius. Lucy beamed. Natsu wiped his mouth. So the blonde can be useful, he thought. Gadgil, so what if you ate some fire? That just put us on equal playing ground. The Iron Dragon Slayer yelled, rushing forward. Natsu glanced at him with a glare. Gadgil then found his face full of flames. You get on my nerves, Natsu said calmly. Iron Dragons roar. Gadgil tried to surprise his opponent. Natsu simply raised his hand and with a flick of his wrist halted the attack, causing it to bounce back at Gadgil. You, and your stupid grin and annoying laugh really got on my nerves. Natsu's eye twitched and his face darkened. Veins began to pop on Natsu's forehead. All of the anger he kept inside all day became a dense hot flame in his fist. Gadgil growled, I'm invincible. Natsu snorted. Gurren Karyukin. Natsu rained powerful punches on Gadgil, destroying Phantom Lord. He crushed the metallic scales covering his opponent. With one final punch, the guild fell deeper into the ocean. Now we're even. Natsu calmed down. Lucy yelled, tripping on the crumbling floor. Happy quickly lifted her away from danger. Natsu tumbled and landed on a platform. Is he okay? Lucy asked the blue cat as she was placed down. Going down there and seeing his response, Lucy's lips formed a line. I suppose he's fine. Happy stared at her with disappointment. Natsu blinked at the sky as it began to swirl. The ruins he played upon began to shake. The old man's back. He spoke. A shock wave sent massive waves upwards, and the area he was resting on suddenly dropped lower. Natsu. Happy yelled. Said Mage was about to speak when the sky seemed to open up and light poured down on everything. Fairy law, Natsu muttered quietly. Happy lifted Lucy away from the rubble as the light grew brighter. Natsu winced as he felt the dark magic inside of him spasm. Before anything else could happen, the light vanished. Happy and Lucy met with everyone on shore as they cheered. Urza nudged Gray and sent him a pointed glare. He rubbed the back of his head. Where's Natsu? Happy yawned. He said something about getting answers. The feline then sulked. I got in trouble for saying ass. Natsu's head hung over the edge of some stone. Oi, metal face, you awake? No answer. Don't be a child just because I stomped your pitiful ass. Ignored again. Where did you learn your dragon slayer magic from? There was a pause before Gadgil hoisted himself up the iron dragon. Natsu hummed. So there were others. Another awkward silence ensued. What happened to your dragon? Gadgil looked away and the other, he mumbled. Natsu was suddenly in his face with an annoyed look in his eyes. I asked what happened to your dragon. Gadgil numbered his head to the others. I said this and the other you turned. They turned away holding their heads in mild pain. Gadgil groaned and once again the two were silent. Metallicana just vanished one day with a word. Natsu leaned back 7 years ago, July 7th. Gadgil turned to him. Did you know Metallicana? Natsu rolled his eyes. No, you idiot, my dragon disappeared the same day. Soul told me, the fire dragon, right? Natsu froze for a moment. Can I trust you? He asked. Gadgil raised an eyebrow. As much as any dragon, Natsu sighed. I wasn't raised by Igneel, I spent some time with him though. I was actually raised by Silence metal face. Natsu turned, but the other slayer was gone. Jackass. Natsu got up and wobbled away. Might as well go home. Natsu ended up resting on some fallen pole of the guild. Gray was talking to him, but he wasn't listening. Levi, Jet, Droy, and Rietus came out of nowhere, and some overdramatic speech was going on. Natsu began to drift off, the lullaby of cheered, and tears sent him to a dreamless rest. Natsu returned to the guild and began lifting planks. A small tower of wood rested on his shoulders as he walked towards the construction site. "Ah, Natsu, you're back," Happy said, nodded and whispered something to the feline. Happy's ears drooped. "Be careful," Natsu glanced at him and sighed. "I'll try, Happy, I'll try." Natsu set his load down and suddenly smelt something delicious. He glanced over at Gray, who was holding a Benoit box in his hands. To his left a blue blur was running away. Natsu raised an eyebrow but continued to work. Gray's weak voice alerted Natsu's ears. "Could you give these keys to Lucy?" Natsu frowned at the weak form of Loke. He was thin and pale, clearly swaying on his feet. "We'll go check on her," Gray said. Natsu stood outside of the small apartment board. "Why was I dragged over here?" A blue ball alerted him to Natsu. "Lucy left." Natsu gave a look that Rad and I should care why. Before watching the other two run down the steps. "Come on." Gray yelled, heading for the train station. "Lucy." Gray yelled, running towards the blonde standing in front of the large grave. She turned around, surprised to see Urza, Gray and Happy rushing for her. A joyful reunion was what they experienced after all of the confusion was resolved. "Hey, where's Natsu?" "On a special mission, Marahan smiled brightly. "Everyone. We can take jobs again." At those words a large crowd of mages ran towards the mission board planted next to the makeshift bar. Lucy sighed. "Why are they so happy? All they do is fool around and drink." Marahan laughed slightly at that, though I wonder, how did Natsu get a job if they were just put up? Gray asked, somehow appearing out of nowhere. Mira pretended to be busy with cleaning, and Lucy tried to ignore Happy's pointed stare. "Maybe we shouldn't talk about him right now." The blonde sweat dropped, leaning away from the large cat eyes. "Why?" Happy questioned. "Is there a problem?" His voice began to rise. "Is his name too foul for you to speak?" "Happy? What's wrong?" The cat turned to face the teen in question. Gray scooted away. "Where the hell did you come from?" Lucy looked equally confused, though Mira just turned the other way. Natsu patted Happy's head and prepared to respond, though, before he could utter a word a table crashed into him, breaking into many pieces. The four in front of him held back a laugh, then turned with an intent to kill whoever threw the item. "I dare you to say that again." It was Urza. Natsu blinked and decided that he could just steal her cake later with no problem. The redhead clenched her fists in rage, glaring at the cocky blonde sitting below her. Laxa sneered. "Then I'll say it again. This guild doesn't need weak bastards. The only bastard here is you." Urza retorted. Laxus ignored the comment and continued. "To be looked down on by a guild like a phantom lord is such an embarrassment." He pointed to Levi, Jet, and Droy. "I'm talking about you three. I heard that you all got beat by the Iron Dragon Slayer Gagiel. You are disgrace to this guild." Levi looked down in shame, and Lucy glared as a defense for her friend. Laxus disappeared in a flash of lightning and appeared next to Natsu, wrapping his arm around the smaller man's shoulders. He snorted. "Natsu is the only one of you fools here that I consider valuable," said Mage, removed arm and walked over to a separate table. Tuning out the continuing argument, he looked down at his hand, slightly paler than usual, and he felt unusually tired. "Must have caught something," he mumbled. Natsu, a voice his name blandly. He turned to fixate Urza with an equally bland look. "Well, going on a mission." She showed him the paper. Scanning it, he nodded and returned to his thoughts. Some hours later. Natsu relaxed at another empty table. "We destroyed a town again," he mused, closing his eyes. "Makarov will pay for it." "Natsu," a young voice interrupted his rest. "What is happiness?" he asked without opening his eyes. "We have another mission." A soft groan came from the fire mage, who simply wanted to rest. "Why do I listen to these people?" Natsu asked while still wobbling from the train ride. "Dunno. You're no help to me." Urza was beginning to annoy her with her random voice practicing. Lucy was saying some shit about gaining experience in performance, and Gray was stripping. "What's the mission?" Natsu asked, gaining strength. "We have to perform." Happy answers. They sighed. What a waste of time. Some time passed before they reached the theater building. Mildly shocked by its eyes, they walked in, admiring the architecture. A small man with a large head, beady eyes, and a tiny mustache peered at them from a pillar. He smiled timidly. "Thank you for taking this mission," he started. "You see," Natsu barely paid attention. All he knew was something about actors and a wife leaving him. After an overdramatic speech from Urza on how well she would help the poor man, they started. They rehearsed for a week and sent Happy with the flyers. Finally, it was performance day, and the small man was nearly in tears. "I've never seen so many people come before. I'm truly thankful. And this will be my first time singing in front of so many people." Lyra, Lucy's spirit, squealed, getting into position. Soon she began her intro song, and the crowd looked at her beautiful voice. Urza made her entrance dressed as a prince. Unfortunately, she stuttered her lines, making the crowd cringe. Lucy was lowered from the ceiling tied with rope. "Please save me, Friedrich Sama, and free me from Sieghard," she spoke dramatically. Gray then appeared but changed his name to Julius, confusing the audience. Gray formed an ice sword while Urza summoned her own blades. No attack was given, but Gray feigned injury and felt as if he was injured, once again confusing the crowd. Urza turned back to Lucy, freeing her, spouting something about having a baby. Gray then yelled at their ignorance and called on his dragon. The cardboard mountains parted, revealing red eyes. Natsu, dressed in a dragon costume, floated above them, carried by Happy, who was dressed in black. The plot changed with Gray and Urza apparently thinking that the dragon was attacking them and decided to cooperate. Lucy directed them to run away, and Happy dropped Natsu, who was spewing a steady stream of fire from his mouth. Natsu crashed through the floor, accidentally catching Lucy's dress on fire. She yelled for Gray to help her, but instead Urza leaped forward and sliced Lucy's clothing, making men cheer and women cover their children's eyes. The redhead covered the blonde in a sheet, stuttering again a question on if the young girl was alright or not. Natsu got up with agitation in his eyes. Before he could utter a word, the head of his costume was frozen and the tail cut. Lucy whined about a failure, and then the whole theater collapsed. She felt tears coming at the fact she failed another mission when she heard the audience cheering. "Bravo," they clapped and laughed at the comical scene of Gray flying to the side completely naked and Urza flinging around an empty dragon suite. Lucy smiled in relief and laughed as well. Another week passed and the five could be found sweating in the changing rooms, still having to perform while the small man cheered them on. "I can't believe you dragged me here," Natsu complained. Natsu drummed his fingers on the table in agitation. He tried to block out the indignant yelling from a group of civilian women, apparently in search of Loke. Their high-pitched bouts of being stood up were ringing in his ears. Happy was talking with Gray and Urza, so he felt he could leave the feline and come back. He got up shakily and coughed. "What did I catch?" he wondered in slight concern. He walked out through the partly constructed doors, just as the women tried to turn the blame on Lucy. He walked around for a few hours trying to forget how crappy he was feeling. He leaned on a wall, panting slightly. "I should go get Happy," he thought. Just as he was about to turn around, said cat flew full speed into his face. "Natsu. This is an emergency. Loke has gone missing." Natsu sighed. "Of course I have to help look for him." He rustled Happy's fur, then headed towards the woods where he could faintly smell the ring bearer. The two took a hurried pace heading for the trees. Natsu forced himself to continue breathing through his nose so Happy wouldn't hear him panting. The sound of a waterfall steadily got louder as Loke's scent grew stronger. A few trees arched in a half circle around a small cliff edge. A grave sat at its peak. Loke stood staring at Lucy. Natsu stopped running. He hadn't smelt her. Something was seriously wrong with him. He wiped his sweaty palms on his jeans and whispered to Happy. "Lucy has found him. I'm going home." Happy nodded and let him leave. Once he was far enough, Natsu fell to his knees, gasping for air. His vision blurred and there was a buzzing in his ears, but he could vaguely hear the crunching of leaves. He looked up and saw the man that had loved one of his friends. A friend that had died, a friend he was blamed for the death of. Natsu coughed. Koru. He was not surprised to see the other here. He was one of many who wanted revenge on him, light brown hair slicked back and green eyes on a slightly pink face. Koru stared hatefully at the team below him and pulled out a knife. "Still using the same weapon, I see." His voice was strained and weak. Maybe he had been poisoned in that town he destroyed. "I will avenge her." Koru's smooth voice held malice. Natsu narrowed his eyes and forced himself to stand, then found the bastards who killed her. "Yana would not want you hunting her friend." It hurt to say her name. Memories of the girl he had fallen for filled his mind. "Don't you dare say her name." Koru's voice rose as he raised the knife. "Stop the innocent act, you murderer." The knife came down, and Natsu quickly grabbed the other's wrist. "You think I would hurt her?" he thought solemnly. "Even in this weakened state, I am too strong for you." Natsu's hand shook as he struggled to keep the weapon away from him. Koru grit his teeth in anger and raised his other hand, aiming a punch. Natsu blocked it as well and began to warm his hands enough to cause blisters on his enemy's hand and wrist. Koru pulled back with a start. "You ripped her limbs from her body and then severed her head. Do you feel no remorse at all?" Koru ran at Natsu with tears in his eyes. "I loved her, we both loved her. But you couldn't have her, so you killed her." Natsu formed a wall of flames and began to step back, trying to create distance. His legs were shaking and he could taste blood in his mouth. His vision continued to worsen before it was as if looking through altered glass. Pain ripped through his shoulder as warm red liquid spilled from a stab wound. He hadn't seen Koru move. "Natsu." That was Happy's voice. Natsu once again grabbed Koru's wrist and yanked the knife from his flesh. He grasped the wound as the sensation of floating took over. His vision was bordering black, and he could barely whisper to Happy to make sure that the assailant didn't follow them before his condition threw him into oblivion. Natsu opened his eyes groggily, rapidly blinking into the sudden blast of light. Everything was pink, down to the covers he was on top of. He looked to the side and saw Gray, Urza, Lucy, and Happy sitting at a table. The blonde was laughing while waving a gold key around, the handle had a print that resembled a lion. Happy wasn't looking at them, the feline's ears drooped. Natsu slowly sat up leaning against the headboard. His shoulder throbbed, still bleeding, and his vision swam though he continued to force himself to a standing position. When he glanced over again he saw them staring back. Natsu. Happy yelled joyfully seeing his adoptive father awake. Natsu groaned softly as the high-pitched voice sent a blinding headache through his brain. "Thank you for your hospitality," Natsu said hollowly to Lucy. He pretended not to notice the unopened first aid kit on the floor. He walked unsteadily to the door, and Happy followed, shooting an angry glare at the three sitting uncomfortably at the table. "Yeah, thanks for helping Natsu." Lucy. She looked away. XDDXXXDDXXXDDX. "You need help, you should go to the guild." Happy tried to convince the other to turn around. "I'll be fine." "Happy, I'm going to an old doctor anyhow." Happy supported Natsu as he stumbled upon a doctor, an old woman named Pruyusika. "Tell me if this is spelt wrong." After about half an hour of stumbling around, Natsu leaned against a tree to catch his breath. Happy flew in front of his face, a deep frown on his features. "Why didn't you tell me?" the feline asked. Natsu looked at the sad face and sighed. Raising a hand to pat Happy's head he said, "I didn't want to worry you, I'm sorry." Happy. Natsu steadied himself and continued through the woods. "We could have gotten you better sooner." Natsu squinted through the trees searching. He sped up slightly when he noticed the one tree with windows. "Is this lady some witch?" Happy asked in confusion. Natsu glanced back at him. "No, but she acts like one." Happy quivered in a tree, covering his ears, trying to block out the old woman's yelling. "What in the world have you done to yourself this time?" the rose-haired woman grunted to the teen lying exhausted on her bed. "Do you think I can patch up every damn thing that harms your body?" She hastily mixed sun fluids and added some ground herbs. "I hate humans." "Abi," she turned and hissed at him like Medusa. "I am not your grandmother." Thank God for that, Natsu thought, trying to ignore how her voice caused his headache to worsen. Pruyusika slammed a bottle onto his face, "Drinking one of these every day until you feel better." Natsu removed the hazard and rubbed his face. "Thanks," he spoke softly before downing the bitter liquid. Pruyusika placed a basket on the side table. "No need to thank me, no, get out." Natsu stumbled off of the bed and out of the door, towing the basket as if it weighed 1,000 pounds. She was scared. Happy whined coming down from the tree. Natsu sighed. "You get used to her." Happy flew in front of Natsu's face. "Do you go to her when you get ambushed?" Natsu was silent. "If I could make it." XDDXXDDXXDDXXDDX. "I knew like was a spirit already, no need to inform me." Lucy crossed her arms. She had just handed the Dragon Slayer a ticket to a Resort that she had received from Loke. "Then why didn't you tell anybody?" she asked, not to believe him. "It was not my business to tell," he replied distractedly, writing in a brown notebook. She huffed and walked away. "Hey Gray," Elfman nudged the raven. "What is it, Elfman?" Gray asked unconsciously, removing his shirt. "What's Natsu writing in that book over there?" Gray huffed. "How the hell should I know, and why should I care?" He felt a small stab of guilt, remembering what he had said to him on Baluna. "Do you think it's a diary?" Gray let the ice shatter and turned to Elfman with a mischievous grin. If Natsu wasn't so engrossed with his writing, he might have heard them conversing and smelt them approaching. Gray tapped his shoulder, coaxing him to turn in his chair, while Elfman snatched the notebook. "Urza will pick us up from the guild to take us to the resort." Natsu narrowed his eyes suspiciously before nodding and turning back to his writing. He slammed his fists on the windowsill when he saw it wasn't there. He looked to his right and saw Elfman pretending to be having a conversation with Levi, his back covering what he was holding. Natsu glared. He did not have the patience for this. He stood still, feeling fatigued. He reached into his pocket and took a swig from his daily bottle. Gray glanced at the window, the frame shattered and crushed. He was beginning to regret his decision. Natsu stomped over to Elfman, who was preparing to open the notebook. He flipped open the first page, and a picture fell out. Levi, Jet, Droy, and the takeover mage stared at it. Elfman soon found himself head first in the guild's floor up to his elbows. Natsu grabbed his belongings back and walked out, seeing Urza and Lucy talking. "Man!" Elfman yelled, resurfacing from the ground. He, like many others, glared over at Natsu, who Gray was trying to inch around. "Oi! Who do you think you are?" Natsu paused and turned with a snarl. Everyone recoiled from the almost evil glare. His eyes were wide with fury, and his lips curled to look animalistic. His scarf and hair jostled as pure killing intent rolled like a waterfall from his body. He then resumed walking. Makarov started after him. He had seen something dark and monstrous. XDDXXDDXXDDXXDDX. Natsu relaxed on his back in clear water, the waves gently moved him farther out to sea. His eyes were closed and he was peaceful despite being above an underwater trench. The water was cold, but he warmed it. He opened his eyes and stiffened so he would sink under the ripples. Suddenly the entire abyss was brightened by flames, steam burst from the water. Natsu forced his eyes open under the pressure to see a serpent heading towards him. He had left his scarf on shore. He smiled cruelly and let the fish swallow him. It began to swim back to the depths before its spine was ripped from its body. Internal organs billowed into the water and blood stained it red. Natsu resurfaced and began to laugh. His eyes were fogged with hatred. He had pretended that the fish was Elfman. Natsu crossed his arms and narrowed his eyes at the gamble machine in front of him. I saw it land on 17, but the ball tipped over the edge. Gambler guy, don't know his name, sweat dropped, that's why it's called roulette. Natsu kicked at the counter. I said I saw it, what kind of shit is this? Boy, when you are in a place for adults you must enjoy it in a dandy fashion. Happy jolted looking at the block man in front of him. Natsu raised an eyebrow. What do you want? The fire mage was still in a sour mood. Boy, let me give you some advice. He began to spin. There are two paths one can take. He pulled out a gun using speed to hide it from Natsu. He can live a dandy fashion. Natsu stepped back as the wall dashed towards him. Or he can just keel over and die. He eyed the barrel of the projectile weapon. He has a gun. Pedestrians began to run for safety. Natsu cocked his head to the side. You must have a death wish. You are not dandy. The boxman's glasses glinted before the lights cut out. What the bang. Blah blah blah. Lucy is freed from Milana's rope and she finds Gray who was with Juvia who was randomly included. Where's Urza and dipshit? Happy the trio turned to see Natsu glancing around frantically. A bit of blood smeared on his chin. He sniffed the air, then ran towards the exit in a panic. Follow him. Gray ordered. Natsu made it to the shore, fear and worry replaced with blinding hatred and rage. If that block bastard hurt Happy there will be hell to pay, he thought. With a burst of magic he propelled himself across the ocean. The world really seemed to hate him. XDDXXDDXXDDXXDDX. Where the hell is he? Gray asked absent-mindedly. It was now daylight and they had sailed all night after the path of burnt fish. Unfortunately the path had just ended. I can't believe that they kidnapped Happy and Urza while we were unconscious. Gray screamed. It is strange, Juvia began. For the mighty Urza to be beaten, Gray stood and glared at her. You don't know a damn thing about Urza, she wasn't beaten. Juvia trembled. Please forgive me. Gray calmed down. Lucy yelled. The raven plopped down with a TCH. The blonde hugged her knees. Now that I think of it, no one really knows much about Urza. They sat in silence. Lucy looked up and saw some strange building in the distance. Oh. That must be the Tower of Heaven. She exclaimed. There was an awkward silence between Natsu and Gray. Well, more of an I will fucking murder you aura against Gamenesai. It had just occurred to Gray that in less than a month he had pushed Natsu into a death cannon and stolen from him, with a few insults thrown in between. Now he really couldn't. Natsu drummed his fingers on the rock, glaring at the guards chatting lazily on the stairs. He didn't have time for this. Where was Happy? Was he okay? What were they doing to him? With those thoughts swimming in his head he drummed his fingers harder. Natsu? Stop, you're going to attract attention. He turned his steely eyes to the blonde. If you don't be quiet your screams of pain will be the noise alerting them. Lucy recoiled away from the seething mage over to where Gray was. They glanced at the ocean as a small area began to rise, revealing Juvia. Juvia has found another way into the tower. Juvia thinks you should hold your breath for about 10 minutes. Natsu nodded. That's fine, Gray answered. What, no? That's entirely impossible. And? Weak-ass Lucy can't do shit. Juvia raised her hand and formed a bubble, then used this. The water will enclose oxygen around your head so you may breathe. Natsu poked his bubble in mild interest. Whoever this girl was, she could replace the blonde at any time. XDDXXDDXXDDX. Bounce resurfacing in the tower's basement, Natsu lit himself to dry, Gray standing next to him, while Lucy wrung out their soaked garments. Hey. Intruders. The four looked up to see more guards. Natsu set his fists alight and lunged up onto the platform. The guards drew their swords and approached him. With a sigh he smashed his hand into the ground, instantly creating an explosion, knocking his opponents to the ground. Lucy called out, Cancer taking care of one of the guards. One, that's what the Mania had, and that's what I put TT, water slicer. Juvia easily took down a group of 10. Ice hammer. Gray drove the rest of their enemies, leaving the basement destroyed. Natsu glanced around looking for an entrance when one opened above him, inviting us in. Gray spoke, crossing his arms. Natsu glanced at him before power jumping up through the entrance. TCH, show off, the ice mage followed using the ladder. Happy? Natsu cupped his hands over his mouth to strengthen his voice. SHHHH, Lucy attempted to hush him, but only received an uncaring glance and louder yelling. There's no point in sneaking around, they already know we're here, Gray indirectly defended Natsu, Juvia nodded, smiling at the raven. Plus, they opened the entrance for us, they could be watching as we speak, Gray sighed. He's probably taunting us. Gray then glanced over at Lucy. What's with your outfit? Lucy smiled and twirled in the dress. Its multicolored layers sparkled in the light, you like? It came from the spirit world. I couldn't stand being in wet clothes, so I asked Cancer to bring this over for me. It's too flashy, you will likely attract the enemy's attention. It's too large and will be a hassle for both fighting and retreat, Natsu waved at her dismissively. Lucy huffed and crossed her arms. Juvia agreed. Juvia nodded at Natsu, but not only that, the dress was also shapeless and over-extravagant. Lucy glared at both, then posed trying to pull a face. No matter what you say, nobody could deny THIS. Natsu rolled his eyes. You look constipated. Huh. Gray tried not to laugh. Lucy turned to the back in anger. What would you know about beauty? It's not like you've ever fallen in love. Natsu froze, then took a deep breath and began walking to one of the doorways. Man. His crush died about 8 years ago, so don't worry about romance. What do you know about me, he thought bitterly. Suddenly the doors in front of Natsu burst open and a horde of guards came rushing in. There they are. The intruders. Natsu sighed and got into a fighting stance, he didn't need magic for this. Before he could make a move, the crowd suddenly fell to the ground. Deep slashes marred their backs. Urza landed on the floor in front of Natsu, she looked at him and the others in surprise. Urza. You're okay. Lucy squealed unhappily. What are you all doing here? Urza asked, her face full of shock. I came for Happy, Natsu answered. We came to save you, Gray emphasized, we glaring slightly at Natsu. Go back, she replied, simply looking away. I'm not leaving without Happy, Natsu declared, stepping around Urza, and that blocky bastard has an appointment with Pain the Red. He grabbed his shoulder. No, you will be returning with the others. Natsu swatted her hand away. You have no authority over me. With that he sprinted off through the doors using his weakened nose as guidance. Mr. Natsu. Juvia tried to call him back but with no avail. He was gone. XDDXXDDXXDDXXDDX. I'm lost, Natsu said to himself, standing in the middle of a random hallway. He glanced around, his senses were still too weak to detect anything. He felt exhausted. I'm overexerting myself, he said, panting. He grabbed a bottle of medicine from his pocket and downed it, then resumed running. He stopped at a room he thought was suspicious. It was full of cat stuff. Paw-printed floor walls and ceiling. Cat heads randomly placed in cat head-shaped cubby holes. The bed frame is covered with cats, mattress, pillows, and a quilt decorated with cat parts. Someone here needed some help. Natsu. Said the mage, looking up to see Happy balancing on the doorframe. Relief flooded into dull eyes as the cat flew into the teen's arms. Natsu stroked his friend's fur, checking for any injuries. He sensed a presence behind him, gunpowder, he thought with a scowl. This is the end for you, B. Natsu threw his fist up, hitting Wally under the chin. The block-like man was sent sprawling into the wall where he slid down, unconscious. May. He turned his cruel stare to Milana, holding Happy so the cat couldn't see. The catgirl trembled, staring into half-lidded dull onyx orbs. She could feel the malice emanating from the other. She raised her kitty rope only to be backhanded into the wall, slumping down along with Wally. Natsu turned to walk away when Wally roused from his rest. This isn't over, Salamander. He attempted to get up only to lean against the wall. He most likely had a concussion. Natsu kicked him down and placed a foot on his face. Natsu. Happy flew from his arms. It's over, we can go now. Natsu glanced at the feline before removing his foot. We will go to paradise, Wally painted, the true freedom Jello told us about. We will rule over all in paradise. Natsu wasn't paying attention to the fallen man, his focus was on the walls which seemed to be moving. Not a second later, mouths bulged from the walls. Painted dark red and smiling. Gross, what are those things? Happy gripped Natsu's arm in fear. Welcome, welcome all, the mouths spoke simultaneously. Jello. Wally asked aloud. I am Jello, the one who controls this tower. All the prices on both sides have been placed. It's just about time to begin the paradise game. The game? Natsu deadpanned, raising an eyebrow. Jello, what is the meaning of this? Wally questioned. The objective is simple, prevent me from using Urza to resurrect Zareth, and you win. Natsu's eyes widened. Zareth. He clenched his fist. Achnologia's creator. Dell continued, but to make this more interesting, I have added 3 players. You must get past them to reach me. Natsu began to walk away, he could deal with this easily. Lastly, it came to my attention that the council is trying to use ether ion to destroy me. If that happens then no one wins. Game over. Natsu crossed his arms, that would be a problem. That's it, enjoy the game, the mouths disappeared. Natsu looked back at Wally cowering in confusion on the floor. Get up, he ordered, the blocky man turned his questioning gaze to the other. We'll stop this guy so just go protect your friend. Wally watched as the boy and cat left. Your scarf is pretty cool. Happy, can you lift me to the top? Aye, sir. The feline grabbed Natsu's shoulders and jetted off towards the top of the tower. Natsu boosted their speed using fire, something glinted in the side of his eye and he turned. Something is coming, he said. Just as the words left his mouth 2 rocket boosters smashed into his chin, sending him back into the building. Happy released his grip and bounced away. Natsu crashed into the wall gaining a headache. Ow, he muttered, salamander. Simon appeared next to him. Who are you and what's with the owl man? Natsu questioned in mild irritation. You cannot break the rules. The warrior of justice is here. Woo woo. Natsu paused. What the hell is that thing? Simon stared wide-eyed. This guy. He grabbed Natsu and whisked him away. We cannot be involved with him. He yelled once at a safe distance. Infinite darkness. Natsu sighed. You do realize that owls can see in the dark, right? In response Simon found his face being smashed. Judgment ho. Natsu stood, body flaming, fists clenched, and eyes furrowed. Stop, salamander. You can't get involved with him. Natsu ignored Simon and concentrated on the look the owl bastard was giving him. It read, I know about you, we are the same. We kill for money, the look amuses him. They were nothing alike, this freak killed the innocent, while Natsu only killed criminals. How dare he compare them, unforgivable. Hum at me, bro, woo woo, evil like you should not exist in this world. Natsu almost flinched. Time to die, woo. The owl thing's jets propelled him at the dragon slayer at a speed which he could not see. Natsu easily sidestepped him, but did not account for the strange creature man to grab his ankle and hoist him high in the air. If this is a fucking owl, why doesn't it use its wings? Were his thoughts before he was dropped. Prior to hitting the ground he flipped himself over to land lightly. The small trip, although, caused slight nausea, not helping his already poor condition. The owl guy. The name hasn't been introduced to the characters so I can't really use it, sorry. Jetted down and aimed a kick at Natsu, who easily blocked it while raising an eyebrow at the other's attire. Black bloody shorts and sneakers, no shirt, just some get packs, yet he was the one people called gay. Fire Dragon's Claw. In a moment of mild annoyance Natsu kicked his opponent in the face hard enough to make an instant kill. Though stunned, the owl stayed standing. Missile. Ho ho hoo. Began with a ho. The jetpacks detached from his back and sped towards Natsu, who easily ducked them. What the Dragon Slayer didn't expect was for a hook to unload from the projectile and snag his scarf. He was pulled into the air, nausea returning as the missile traveled quickly in a circle. Happy face palmed. This is what happens when you don't take your opponent seriously. Natsu attempting to keep down the few contents left in his stomach. Natsu fiddled lethargically with his muffler trying to unhook himself. I am well aware of your weakness. Woo. The owl man seemed proud of himself. Simon glanced back and forth between the spinning team and Freak. He has motion sickness. Now that my prey is weak I can move in for the kill. The hook released Natsu, and the nauseated boy fell to the ground. This is the essence of hunting. The owl man ran towards the plummeting mage. He opened his mouth widely in what could be considered a deranged smile, and allowed the Dragon Slayer to fall in. What the gah? Disgusting. Natsu thrashed, still dizzy, as he was swallowed. What do you think you are doing? Happy yelled fearfully. Simon watched in shock as the owl's stomach puffed out. I can digest the magic of those I have eaten, he informed them. The few tufts of pink hair decorated his feathered head as flames lighted his body. Boo woo. And of course it just happened to be Gray who arrived at the scene. He glanced at Simon and the stricken Happy in confusion. What are you doing? You were supposed to go after Shu. He yelled. We got helped up, Simon replied weakly as Birdie took that chance to look at the new arrival. Gray. Help. That guy swallowed Natsu. Gray stared at the owl. That idiot will never live this down, he thought as plans of an epic rescue filled his mind. Ice make, Lance. He attracted instantly, though the offense was countered by the opponent who delivered a weak version of Fire Dragon's roar. Due to the unexpected attack, the raven didn't move as flames engulfed him. His ice melted and the heat seared him. The owl laughed at the pained screams. Ice is no match for fire. Woo. Stupid bastard. Gray groaned in pain. Useless. The owl's voice was becoming increasingly annoying. If you are the salamanders you should know the sheer power of these. The comma. Something snarled, not even close to. But the final grunt Gray froze the offending heat source, creating a display of trapped embers. He froze the flames. Simon exclaimed in astonishment. Gray laughed and wiped some of his charred skin away. I've seen what happens to whomever gets caught in that bastard's flames. You're a little fake, I should be dead right now. Owlman raced forward, splendid ability. I shall capture you as well. The beak opened into that grotesque smile once again, only for an arm to shoot from the throat, grabbing Gray's face. The limb was slimy and dripping who knows what. Officially grossed out, Gray had to let himself be used as a ledge. Natsu pulled himself from the engine's esophagus. Still using Gray, he kicked the other hard in the face, sending him flying into the wall. They landed with what sounded like a puddle splash. He walked over to the partially conscious owl thing and repeatedly punched him while muttering random curses. Disgusting freak, swallowing me, like the fucker he is. Shitty Owlman with freakish head. Gray opted to wipe grossness from his face and hair while the others watched on in shock. The Owlman was left with a conclusion: broken ribs, dislocated jaw, and broken arm. Natsu smelt bad. He was low on magic, sick, annoyed, and did I mention that he smelt really bad? Simon was walking a safe distance away, explaining something as if Natsu was actually listening. At least until Simon said, "Please, you must save Urza." Natsu turned to him and said with hesitation, "I don't wanna." Simon's jaw dropped. "Why do you refuse to save your own?" First of all, Natsu regarded him with a dark stare. "I have no, Happy is his son, not a friend." That statement caused Simon's glare to convert into a look of shock. Second, he's Urza's enemy, so she should fight him. This has nothing to do with me. Urza has no hope of defeating Jell. Simon yelled, "She is an S-class wizard, she can handle herself." Simon gripped Natsu's scarf, lifting the other slightly from the ground. "This is not about strength. Urza thinks she can save Jell. She won't want to hurt him." Natsu continued to stare calmly into furious eyes. Simon released the muffler and calmed down. Jell is a cunning man, he will use Urza's lingering feelings against her. Yet that is not the main concern. In about 10 minutes the council is planning to use Etherian to destroy this place, which got Natsu's attention. Everyone on this island will certainly die. Urza went off telling everyone to leave. She must be planning to use Etherian to die, taking Jell along with her. Natsu frowned at that. He couldn't leave her to die. Despite her attitude towards him, he knew what he should do. Where is she? What the hell? Natsu flattened himself against the wall to avoid falling out of the tower. He scanned his eyes over the now light blue structure. Arg. Natsu's ears twitched at the sound of Urza's pained yell. Natsu sighed, then steadied himself on the brittle floor and ran. Another scream prompted him to sprint faster. He reached the top of the tower to see Urza being absorbed into a large circular crystal. Jell was chanting words to Zareth and Natsu used the distraction to sneak closer. "Jell." Urza's voice held both anger and pain. "Jell. Shut up already, you're giving me a headache." Natsu pulled Urza from the light blue Tristine, much to Jell's annoyance. The redhead steadied herself before turning with panicked eyes to Natsu. "What are you doing here? Why didn't you leave with the others?" Natsu regarded her with a blank stare. "Well," he spoke slowly. "I thought I came up here to defeat the maniac trying to kill us all." Urza shook her head. "You can't beat Natsu. You have to escape now." Natsu grit his teeth. "With my state of health, probably not." He held back a cough. "Thanks for the support." Urza was about to yell again, but a quick punch to the stomach sent her into unconsciousness. Deli hummed irrational. "Weren't you?" Natsu ignored him and pushed the reed to the side with his foot. "It appears you don't have such a great relationship with Jell's." Face exploded in pain as Natsu's fist crushed his nose. The blue note glared up, holding his nose at the dragon slayer. "Not one for chats, I see." His voice was smooth despite the blood running down his face. Natsu stayed silent, trying not to show the pain he was in. "Perusica is going to be pissed if I get out of this." He gritted his teeth and covered himself in flames. Jell chuckled and stood straight. "Since you had the nerve to interrupt my ceremony, I'll have to crush you with my heavenly magic." Jell's body began to glow, and a smile stretched itself across his face. "Meteor." Immediately the blue note curved behind Natsu, attempting to kick the dragon slayer down. Natsu caught the foot easily and swung his attacker towards a lacrima stalagmite. Jell reactivated his magic, this time at a faster speed. With the advantage, Jell managed to successfully kick Natsu in the gut. Natsu's muscles tightened as blood filled his throat. Laughing, Jell soared above the injured. "Enough of this. It's time for you to witness real destructive power." He put his fist over his palm, but with 2 fingers extended. "Shichisuken. 7-star sword." Natsu cursed under his breath. He didn't have enough magic to block this. 7 golden beams pelted down toward him with an earth-shaking boom. Dust cleared to reveal a gaping hole in the cerulean floor, and Natsu lay seemingly motionless on the floor. "Oh?" Jell raised an eyebrow, mildly impressed. "You're still in one piece." Surprising, he sighed and looked at the large hole marrying his tower. "Though it seems I've gone too far with this one." Further damage to the R system would be troublesome. Magic is already leaking out. But the smirk he averted his gaze to the fallen Titania will have to hurry na. Urza. It was at that precise moment when Jell saw the bulbous shadow looming over him, with wide eyes he turned his head to meet blue before being crushed into the floor. Rising from the rubble he glared at Natsu furiously, ripping up another price of crystal with a smug look in his eyes. Oh. Are you mad? Sorry, I just felt like renovating the place, don't mind me. Jell snarled, you little punk. I'm going to finish you in an instant. You will regret getting up again. I'll send you to hell. With a throw of his arms Jell summoned spears of light and sent them flying at the dragon slayer. The attack was easily avoided, angering Jell more. With another throw of his arms, Jell conjured a sphere of magic. Natsu easily stopped it one-handedly. He glanced over to Urza and grit his teeth to see her waking. Too scared to destroy your precious tower? Your attacks seem weak. Why are you suddenly so talkative? I think I need to shut you up again. Jell screamed, thrusting his palm forward. An invisible force abruptly sent Natsu backwards. He flipped and kicked towards the floor, fire dragons, grand flame. Natsu. Urza groaned, raising her head to see the tower slowly being demolished. My tower that I spent 8 years in Toyu. Unforgivable. Jell raised his arms in an X shape above his head. Killing intent rolled off him in waves blasting air in all directions. Natsu covered his eyes, and Urza gripped the ground to avoid being sent flying. They looked down to see his shadow extending towards Jell. What is this? Fall into the darkness. Dragon Slayer. Urza forced herself up and ran in front of Natsu with her arms spread out. Are you going to kill me? Her smooth voice cracked slightly. Jell stared at the red head for a moment before answering blankly, at this point, it makes no difference with or without you. Urza's eyes widened, both of you will be reduced to nothing. Our black balls of magic formed above Jell. Move, Urza. Natsu called out behind her. The mage was silent until she whispered, I have been so cruel to you, please forgive me. Natsu didn't reply. There had been so many times he wanted to slaughter everyone in Fairy Tail that he didn't think forgiveness was an option. He would have dreams of their bloody burned corpses lying in a pile, and he stood on top would laugh as the guild burned around him. He didn't want to forgive them. If he wasn't saving their asses they wouldn't give a damn, so why should he? There was no reason. His eyes hardened and a frown planted itself on his face. I don't know how to forgive people. Urza's sigh was drowned out by Jell's laughing. I see, I'm sorry. Alteris. Jell bellowed and sent his spell towards the two mages. Move, goddammit. Urza. The attack never hit. Urza opened her eyes to see Natsu now in front of her and Simon in front of him. The dragon slayer straightened his back and stared slightly surprised at Simon. Urza, the large male mumbled before collapsing. But the small shriek Urza ran past Natsu to the other. Simon coughed, blood flowing freely from his mouth. Urza yelled questions at him for years in her eyes, while Simon only smiled. I'm glad you're okay, he spoke calmly despite being in pain. I'm glad I could be of some help, Urza screamed louder, her tears flowing freely now. Stop talking, she screamed. Simon began to cry with her. You were always so gentle, his eyes glazed over and young Urza smiling appeared in front of his eyes. I love you, he sobbed just before his eyes slid shut. Urza stared at the lifeless body in her arms before screaming out to the sky. Behind her Natsu thought back to that morning when he was young. And the girl of his dreams was dismembered on the floor. Across the room Jell resumed laughing PFFFT. How pathetic. Natsu glanced down at the pieces of Ethereum on the floor, his gaze traveling to Urza still hunched over Simon, then to the laughing maniac. Damn it all, secretly he picked a piece up just as Jell started speaking again. That idiot died in vain. Ha, what a foot. Shut up. Jell stopped laughing, he and Urza looked at Natsu. The fire mage tossing a piece of Ethereum before a bite out of it. I'm sick of you. Natsu's body erupted in a flurry of blue magic, his eyes glowed in the same color, and veins bulged from his face. Urza and Jell stood astonished. He ate Ethereum. Both wondered aloud. Natsu threw down his arms, creating two desperate blasts and Jell hurriedly dodged them. Getting up the dragon slayer began to choke, magic and blood slipped from his lips as he hacked. Natsu. Urza yelled, what is he thinking? Ethereum is composed of many elements, not just fire. She thought. He's killing himself. Jell almost laughed aloud, destroyed by his own simplicity. Natsu removed his hands from his neck, Ethereum magic once flowed into his body, and with Yell's flames, now an ominous red, formed a dragon around him. No, Jell thought, not possible. He actually absorbed Ethereum. Jell went to glare at Natsu only to find the male directly in front of him, flames steadily darkening, a twisted grin curling on his face away from Urza's view. Jell felt burning pain explode in his gut as he flew through the air and crashed into the floor. Coughing blood, he sat up on a piece of his now falling tower and glared at the boy missile coming at him. Scales forming around his eyes and upper arms, Natsu's eyes an abyss of seemingly nothing, no emotion. Just that twisted unnerving smile. Meteor. Jello yelled, fly out of Natsu's path. Think you can catch up with me? Bullshit, I won't let you destroy any more of my progress. Natsu crash landed into the already falling debris and got up. Jello. Natsu's voice came out strangely, almost as if two people were talking slightly out of sync. I'll kill you. With a powerful kick that shattered the lacrima slab beneath him, Natsu shot up at inhuman speeds, elbowing Jello hard in the ribs. Impossible, I can't be defeated. I will crest a world of freedom, Jello screamed. TT, I am the chosen one. Only I can make this world free. He continued, soaring high above the tower with a maniacal smile on his face. Natsu's own grin slipped away once in Urza's view, but the flames still darkened now a deep burgundy. Then the Dragon Slayer latched to a pillar watching Jello. The Blue Note waved his hand through the air, and below him, formed an abyss break. Natsu narrowed his eyes while Jello snickered. Zareth, just wait a few more years. You're an idiot. Jello turned his head to see Natsu behind him. Hand poised like a claw and covered in flames. There is no freedom for the likes of you. Natsu then swatted him down, sending the dark mage through each level of the tower, before he crashed at the bottom motionless. He's still alive, he thought, sourly going for a last attack but stopped abruptly and coughed, feeling his body grow weaker. With blood dripping down his mouth he fell to his knees gasping for breath. Natsu? Urza hobbled forward just as the Dragon Slayer lost consciousness and collapsed. She looked down at his pain-bloodied face, she sighed with slight relief as she saw his chest rise and fall, albeit unevenly. Her eyes widened when what was left of the tower began to rumble, magic leaking from it causing a glow. With wide eyes she rushed to lift Natsu and headed over as quickly as she could to Simon's corpse. A large quake made her stumble, and the ledge all three were on tilt. Simon's body slid closer to the edge, and with a pained heart, Urza ran the other direction. I'm sorry, Simon. As she ran, the lacrima bubbled and distorted, becoming less able to contain the magic. The redhead fell once more and looked around frantically. Is this it? She thought, are we going to die here? She looked at Natsu sprawled over the floor, and with new determination she stood. What can I do? She asked aloud, looking around, her eyes caught sight of one large circular lacrima. Instantly she thought back to what Jello had attempted earliest. If I fuse with this, I could control and prevent the explosion. She thought. She placed her hand to its blue surface, and instantly her arm was engulfed. Jaira, she screamed, gripping her shoulder. Natsu awoke in a mild panic, hearing the scream, not fully realizing where he was. He twisted his head, blurry vision still leaving him disoriented. He gazed at Urza before his vision cleared, and he shot up only to fall back down coughing blood. What are you doing? His host's voice spoke between coughs as he struggled once again to lift himself from the floor. Urza frowned guiltily after the way she had treated Natsu all these years. He still, with all the hatred he had towards her, tried to help her. Forgive us, she said, please. With one last breath she succumbed to the as Natsu finally made it to his feet. He stared into her eyes with no expression before everything went white. Rain poured heavily upon the graveyard as the sky cried. Clouds blocking the sunlight over a grave. Upon it the stone statue of a knight on its horse. Fairy tale mages crowded in front of it, Master Makarov standing the closest. One of my children has died. He paused for a second, staring at the crimson crosses resting beneath the statue. Urza Scarlet, he began to cry. My strong and courageous daughter sleeps with the fairies now. I pray that she is happy with them, as we were happy to have her here. Our Titania, we will miss you. Behind the crowd came the council, humble enough to let their clothes become sodden in the downpour. Due to expression of bravery, courage, and strength, the man in the middle spoke calmly. Urza Scarlet shall henceforth be count amongst the 10 great mages. There was silence. Were they supposed to be happy? Was this useless proclamation to a dead woman supposed to make them feel lightened? The sound of wet footsteps caused the crowd to turn to another approaching figure. Natsu, dressed respectively in a completely black tailless suit, stood a small distance away. The others glared and Makarov didn't turn around. What are you doing here? Gray growled. I came to pay my respects. Natsu spoke with truth though his face stayed blank, not even a frown. Respect? Gray sneered furiously. Respecting the woman you killed, Lucy began to sob. Around them others also began to weep and stared with malice at Natsu. Natsu stood there, mouth half open, his expression turned deeply hurt. I see, he croaked, that's what everyone has thought. He spoke so quietly no one heard. Leave, Gray ordered, holding Lucy to his chest. I do not support Gralu. Natsu looked up at him and then down at Happy Hap. He's staying with us, Gray's voice hardened. Happy looked at the raven with wide eyes, then stared at Natsu who smiled sadly. Goodbye Happy, I'll go say hi to Lysana for you. At that Makarov turned around with surprised and worried eyes. Why? But Natsu had already gone. Natsu painfully opened his eyes to a dark room. Moonlight filtered in through the large window, illuminating enough for him to get a vague idea of where he was. The hotel, he thought, wiping his eyes. He felt wetness and deduced that he had cried in his sleep. He looked around the room, no one, not even Happy, was there. He looked down at the bandages covering his chest, arms, and legs. His shirt and boots were missing, and Natsu's eyes widened. My journal, he whipped his head around, frantically looking for the small book. Damn cat, give it back. Natsu heard Lucy's annoying voice outside the door. No. This is Natsu's and you have no right to read it. Happy screamed. The door flung open, revealing the blue feline and blonde. In the cat's clutches was a small brown book. Both froze seeing the dragon slayer sitting up in bed. Happy quickly threw the book across the room, and Natsu let it land in his lap. Dark eyes glared at Lucy. The blonde swallowed, then backed up before running down the corridor, most likely where Gray and Urza were. Natsu softened his gaze as he turned to Happy. Thank you. Happy nodded furiously. Aye, sir. The feline twirled in the air before following Lucy down the hall. But the sigh Natsu raised and lit his finger to draw a symbol in the air. It glowed briefly before opening a cross-dimensional pocket. He gave inside the large hole with tired eyes before reaching in and pulling out a small pen. His lips formed a straight line as he stared upon it. Still smells like her, he thought. Natsu flipped open his book to the next clear page, its edges curled and yellowed with age. He placed a ballpoint pen gently onto the paper and began to write. His face remained blank besides the occasional frown. He got to the end of his entry, and his expression contorted to anger. He then relaxed and sealed the pen away once more. He placed the book under his pillow and laid back. Good night, he whispered to no one before closing his eyes. Fireworks, I'm about to sit here and make fireworks, Natsu thought bitterly, staring at the sky. He heard Urza screaming in the small distance and formed fire in his mouth. Placing a hand to his lips, he shot out small balls of fire into the sky. They spread and formed flowers and the fairy tale mark. He watched his art plus to the beating of his heart. He sat down in the sandy grass to watch. The team stared in awe. Natsu was only mildly surprised at their guild now standing 3 stories high, looking like a castle. They really rebuilt it, Gray gasped, looking back and forth. It's huge, Urza acknowledged. We have an open cafe now. Gray continued in the souvenir shop at the entrance. Happy picked up some figurines. Wow, they did a really good job. He complimented brightly. And look at Lucy's clothes come off. Natsu didn't spare a glance at the stand and glided silently into the guild. He heard the others gasp from behind him as he looked around. There was a stage in the back of the enlarged guild hall. Natsu could smell pool water close by and wandered to the basement. A game center, he muttered to himself. Walking back up the steps, he looked up and saw other mages upstairs. Mostly ones that weren't S-class. He felt eyes on him and glanced towards a distant corner of the guild. Riitas was discreetly watching him from the corner of his eyes with Elfman, Levi, Jet, and Droy surrounding him. He looked really young and was smiling, Levi whispered, like a really big smile, and the little girl was smiling too. SHH Levi-chan, he's watching us, Droy whispered. Probably still pissed about last week, damn creepy guy. Why does he have pictures of kids in his journal? Natsu clenched his fists and began walking over. Riitas jolted and rushed to hide some papers. Riitas, Makarov called out from the guild hall, you had no right to pry into Natsu's business, let him take the pictures. Gulping, the round man placed the papers down, not even bothering to look. Natsu stomped on them, then set them alight. He stared at all of them coldly, not saying anything. Heavy tension settled over the group and was finally released when Natsu turned swiftly and walked away. Makarov hopped from the bar and towards the rest of the recently arrived group. They stared as Natsu stood just a few meters away staring at the floor. Makarov cleared his throat and then spoke anyways. I would like to inform you that we have 2 new mages joining us today. Yuvia walked up from behind the short man smiling. Her hair was cut short and spiked out at the bottom. Natsu nodded to her while the others greeted her warmly. Oh, you know each other? Well, to make her feel welcome, Makarov grinned then turned to the side. Then I expect you to treat him just as kindly. Okay, introduce yourself. Red Eyes gave them an unkind stare before the MUSCULAR. Gadgil is hot, and no one can tell me otherwise. Man turned around in his seat. There was a brief silence before objections rose from the group. Gray and Urza glared hard and the former phantom member with deep disgust and hatred. Lucy recoiled in slight fear, holding Happy to her chest. Wimpy ass bitch. Natsu raised an eyebrow. You joined. I thought we were all weeks come to you. Gadgil glared at him. You are. I just had no place to go. So then you're a hobo shaking up in this guild. I ain't no frigging hobo. Gadgil pointed to his shoulder where his black fairy tale mark was. Natsu folded his arms and tilted his head to the side. Did you seriously copy me? Creep, the fire dragon slayer, ignored Gadgil's report to see Jet and Droy glaring at the both of them. Natsu tilted his head to the side again, his bangs forming a shadow that covered one of his eyes that seemed to glow red. Is there a problem? The two jolted and walked away quickly. Natsu huffed and sat 2 arms lengths away from the other dragon slayer. "What, you're not gonna avoid me?" Gajil asked, placing his chin in his hands. Natsu snorted. "Don't get me wrong, your smell disgusts me, but us dragon slayers gotta stick together, you know." "Oh. Well, that's actually pretty nice of you. That and you're just slightly less of a bastard than everyone else." "Asshole. Metal face. Bullshit." Natsu cursed to himself, lying face down in his bed. Happy had gone to the guild to help set up, while the dragon slayer opted to sit around. He would go on a mission, but the guild isn't taking any at this time, and his bitchy supplier doesn't have anything for him. "And help me when I need you, can you, slut?" he damned her out loud, officially pissed off. With an exaggerated groan, he rolled himself off his mattress and to the floor, slowly stood up. He sighed, then left the house. Might as well see what's going on instead of sleeping the day away. He strolled through the woods as the aroma from multiple shops and restaurants wafted to his nose. Natsu found his mouth watering and his stomach growling. Well, it had been 30 minutes since he last ate. Might as well avoid starvation and get a snack or 20. Entering town, besides the tempting scent of food, was the smell of 4 individuals that Natsu would like to avoid. Yes, besides his team there were other fucktards he didn't want to deal with. Their aura tainted the pastry-filled air and made Natsu turn around and head back to his house. Of course, Happy just had to be in that specific area at that specific time and shouted out to him from the fish stand. Natsu looked at the cat, looked at the path back to bed, the cat, bed, cat, bed. The choice was obvious and simple. What is happiness? The rose-haired teen avoided growling at the blue feline floating in front of him. The cat smiled and pointed to the middle-aged man running the stand. He said he needs someone to cook his fish for him because his wife got sick. "You'll do it, won't you?" He said he'll pay. Natsu glanced at the man, who nodded pleadingly. "Whatever. Yay. Now can I have my free fish?" Happy didn't see the look on Natsu's face as he flew off with his prize. Damn cat. After glaring after the blue blur, Natsu turned an indifferent gaze to the older man. "What do you want me to do?" "Wow. Such a talented young man." "Boy, fried squid please." "Roasted cod." "Mama, I want some." Natsu sighed and took a squid from the rack, slicing off the legs with his fingers and throwing them high in the air. He took the head and removed the eyes, gills, and beak. Squid and octopus have beaks, before throwing it into hot oil with some spices. He helped the pot up and the tentacles fell in as well. The crowd clapped as he reached for 2 cod. While shaking the pot, he removed the fish scales and threw them in the air, setting his hand on fire to dry it. He grasped seasoned flour and threw it at them so hard it painted both, and did the same to the other while it was still in the air. As the fish fell, he set the pot down and skewered the squid and put the legs in a small paper container, sprinkling seasonings on it. Money landed on the table, and the fish was grabbed before exclamations of how good the food was were heard. With his now free hand, he grabbed another 2 skewers and impaled both fish before setting them alight with his hands. He handed the meal to a young man and child before receiving money. "Thank you," he said, kindly enough for the woman to smile. Listening briefly to other orders, he put the money away and grabbed more seafood from the racks around him. The owner of the shop had gone off to get more sea bass, while Natsu didn't even struggle with multitasking. He threw more raw meat in the air along with the seasons and cooked them before handing them out. Though people cheered him and seemed amazed by his cooking ability strictly reserved to fish, he really didn't feel up to the task. He wasn't lazy enough to leave the man's stand, but when the guy came back, Natsu was getting his pay and leaving. As if on cue, the man came along, though empty-handed. Natsu raised a brow and looked curiously behind the male if someone else was carrying the fish. When no one appeared, he simply turned back to his cooking, taking money and cleaning his hands. "Thanks, kid." The owner bowed slightly at Natsu, handing the teen a well-sized pouch of money. "I'm closing up now, gotta save some of this fish for my family tonight." Natsu served the last customer and washed his hands before bowing back. "No problem, thanks for the money." "Alright kid, you head on back to your guild. Fantasia should be great this year. Best to spend it with your friends." Natsu hesitated to nod and didn't comment. He walked away calmly with his eyes to the sky. He watched the clouds and people just walked around him despite his slow stroll. Maybe it would be better to spend tonight at the guild, he thought, just as he was stepping into said establishment. He stared at the scene in front of him, his face drooping into an exaggerated frown. Ahead of him, the girls that had participated in the Miss Fairy Tale competition stood as stone statues on the stage, a look of shock permanently chiseled in their faces. Natsu turned on his heel just as Makarov's eyes met his and said, "This seems to be a bad time." Makarov went to yell after him, but Natsu found he couldn't exit the door. His face pressed against the invisible barrier he had just slammed into. "Hey. Yeah, great idea to spend your time at the guild, Natsu. One of your most lucky ideas yet. God fucking damn." Natsu rested his forehead on the barrier dead to the world while Makarov tried fruitlessly to get the teen's attention. Despite the old man's yells and the battle updates flashing frequently in front of his face, the Dragon Slayer just stared out into the street watching the civilians clearly unamused. Happy eventually flew over landing by his feet and nudged him. Natsu? Come on, the guild really needs your help. Master is all stressed because Laxus is making everyone fight each other. The feline only succeeded at making the male sign. There are 42 members remaining, Happy stated looking up at the barrier. Makarov clenched his fists, eyes wide. Only 42. He yelled internally. Looking back at the younger mage, he caught Natsu staring up at the barrier with eyebrows furrowed. Elfman versus Evergreen. He thought, frowning when not even 5 minutes later the barrier read Victor. Evergreen, he sneered and let out a heavy breath before turning to Makarov with frustration. What do you want me to do? I honestly doubt that Laxus will kill all of them, Natsu said, motioning to the petrified women on stage. You think I'm bluffing, Pinky? Natsu sighed in annoyance as the man in question appeared behind him. What are you still doing here in the first place? I thought the old man would have persuaded you to leave already. Natsu rolled his eyes and strode away from the obnoxious man, ignoring his conversation with Makarov. Do you surrender? Natsu glanced down at the old man. Makarov grit his teeth but remained silent. We still have Gray. Happy yelled in defense, much to the master's surprise. VSH, you've got high hopes for that loser. Laxus sneered. Humming slightly, Makarov let out a breath. It would be best not to underestimate Gray. Laxus. Gray versus Bixlow. Victor. Bixlow. Laxus laughed loudly while Makarov and Happy stared, shocked at the barrier. Natsu sighed, blocking his ears from the loud gaffes echoing in the hall. Who's gonna beat them now, huh? The blond man chuckled, much to Happy's fury. What about Gagiel? He yelled. With one last snort, Laxus began to pick at his nails, now bored with the whole ordeal. He's not participating, not like he really cared about the guild anyways. Natsu raised an eyebrow, mildly surprised before pressing against the barrier, searching for weak points in the magic. Makarov dug his fingers into his palms, then let out a deep breath and forced himself to relax. Alright, the old man spoke calmly. I surrender, Laxus. Natsu flicked his eyes to him, then turned to Laxus once more. The blond man smirked and glared down at them. That won't do, he purred, chuckling. We can't have the great master of fairy tale give up so easily. No, if you really want to resign, you'll give me your title as guild master. Makarov tensed again. So this is what you were after, Laxus. The blond man smiled wickedly. There's only an hour and a half left for the old man. Better think this one over good. Well? Laxus sneered. You have an hour and a half, old man. All you have to do is announce over the intercom that you place me as the new guild master. Then all of this can stop. After a moment of silence, he clicked his tongue. I'll let you mull on that thought. His body then dissipated, leaving his grandfather with a heavy heart. Makarov, Natsu glared at the spot Laxus was previously at. What are you going to do? The old man sighed. Laxus, he has too much selfishness and hate in his heart to take this seat from me. Natsu's face calmed, then. Let me take care of the bastard. Natsu twitched at being interrupted and turned to the edge of the stage where Gagiel sat munching on an iron cup. The master's eyes widened. You would actually do that for us? The Iron Dragon Slayer shrugged. I've got a bone to pick with the idiot anyways. Gagiel waved them off, heading for the barrier. He smirked. Don't fret about it, I'll knock some sense into High. The muscular male paused abruptly once he ran into the barrier, his cheek smashed to the side. Hey. Makarov and Happy yelled. Natsu shook his head. The hell is this? Makarov critically analyzed the runes and clenched his teeth at the new results. Only 2 are left. Behind him argued heatedly with Natsu, who ignored him for the most part, with an occasional roll of the eyes and snort. Makarov, these two are the remaining combatants. He dropped his head and braced himself for defeat. You'll know what, let's just revive Urza. Natsu cut the other Dragon Slayer off and walked towards the stage. Makarov blinked at him. Hey, have you figured out something? Natsu turned to him with a blank straight face and said, if I set her on fire, the stone should melt, right? It wasn't a question. There was a brief pause before the old master started screaming. No. Natsu, are you trying to kill her? Gagiel tapped his chin. That's actually a good idea, you should try it. Don't encourage him. Natsu acknowledged Gagiel with a light huff and laid the statue down and lit the area around her on fire. Natsu. Let that fire out right now. Natsu ignored the guild master and made the flames stronger, enticing himself with the dark orange embers. Crack. Natsu looked down at Urza's face to see a large crack in her petrified forehead. He hissed lightly, lifting her. Oops, my bad. He turned to look at Makarov. The old man's face was frozen in an exaggerated jaw drop. Got any glue? Gagiel took in a deep breath. I actually think you need to weld it. Makarov let out an anguished squeak and Natsu looked back at the redhead. Let's weld it then. Just as the words left his mouth, the crack spread to the woman's neck. He dropped her none too gently, much to the master's horror, and the statue completely shattered, revealing a surprised and fleshy Urza. "Oh, you're fine. Oh well. Were you really trying to kill her?" Urza spoke darkly, feeling her overly warm sides glaring at Natsu quizzically. They just stared blankly at her, giving away nothing. Her eyes squinted at him, and he merely blinked. "You do realize that I could hear everything, right?" "No." Makarov sighed relieved, then narrowed his eyes, confused as to why Natsu's idea worked. "See, I knew she would be fine. She only absorbed the magic through her relay anyways," Natsu spoke matter-of-factly. Makarov's eye twitched. "You knew? Then why didn't you tell us?" Natsu shrugged. "I like jokes." "The hell you do." Calming down, he smiled. "But now we can strike back." Urza nodded. "The number of combatants have changed as well." Makarov grinned, then blinked in shock when the number changed to 4. "Who?" Urza smirked. "Looks like that man has decided to participate." Natsu laid in the center of the floor staring at the ceiling. He was honestly feeling a bit tired, but he couldn't trust sleeping out where he was vulnerable. Forcing his eyelids to stay open, he glanced around, then to the statues, and blinked as they began to glow. He glanced at the runes to see the results. Urza versus Evergreen. Victor. Urza. He dropped his head back to the floor while the others around him discussed the situation. He could swear that he could hear Laxa screaming in anger in the distance, or maybe just a hallucination. Natsu paced the floor, which began to annoy the girls and others in the room. "What the hell is wrong with you?" Gadgil snapped, earning a dull look from Natsu. "Laxa seems pissed." "Ah." Gadgil snorted. "How can you tell?" Natsu stared at him for a while, then sighed. "You seriously can't feel all the static in the air? It's annoying." "You're the one who's annoying right now," Gadgil yelled. Natsu flipped him off and went to retort, but suddenly a loud buzzing interrupted him. The rune barrier projected a large skull with a lightning mark blocking one of its eyes. The symbol then popped up all around the guild hall, startling the girls. "Boy, can you hear me, old man?" Laxus's voice was impatient and gruff. "It seems we have lost one of our rules." He took a deep breath as if to calm himself. "So I'm going to instate a new one." Natsu could hear the smile in Laxus's voice. "To keep this battle going, I've activated the Hall of Thunder." "The Hall of Thunder," Makarov yelled, staring at the large symbol before him. Laxus laughed. "Only an hour and 10 minutes remain. Still think you can beat us? Or will you retire quietly, master?" He let out a series of laughs before the communication runes disappeared. Makarov stared up at where the symbols had been previously, veins strained against the skin on his face and hands as he screamed in fury. "Why are you dragging the civilians into this, Laxus?" "Guh." The master let out a choked sound and grabbed at his heart. Natsu turned to him, eyes wide, as the old mage fell to the floor. "Master?" the group yelled, Murahin heading upstairs for some medication. "Old man?" Natsu stared at his now unconscious guildmaster, ignoring the others as they ran around. Murahin alerted them of something outside, but instead of moving he continued to watch Makarov breathe heavily. "Natsu?" Happy yelled at the frozen mage. Shaking him, "Natsu, Laxus is going to destroy the town. He has living link magic on all these strange lacrima on the around the town. If we don't do something, everyone will die." Murahin and took the master away. "Oh. But it looks like Levi can get rid of the runes for you and Gadgil." Natsu let out a deep breath and patted the cat's head. "Alright, Happy." He went and sat by the door, staring out at the wandering townspeople, not noticing that he was increasing the temperature of the guild mildly. He grit his teeth, but kept a calm facade. Some of the girls passed him warily to go fight, and he just sat there watching and saw that Lucy won a battle and blocked out Gadgil's yells of astonishment. "I've done it," Levi yelled, holding a stack of papers. She ran to the entrance with glee. "Just wait. I'll rewrite the enchantments." Natsu stood as the barrier shredded and clenched his fists. "Tell Makarov that I'll handle this," he said to no one in particular. "Boy, I'm too dumbus here." "Hush, Gadgil, you're too loud." Natsu flung open the cathedral doors, accompanied by a yell next to him. Glancing over, he saw Urza looking less than pleased and surprised to see him. Ignoring her, he turned to the scene beforehand. Miss Dogan and Laxus stood across from each other, Laxus giving the shorter mage a dark maniacal glare and smile. The Miss Dogan turned briefly to them, acknowledging them silently. Flinching when his eyes met Urza's. "Pay attention." Laxus yelled at him, sending an electric blow to the hooded mage's head. With a grunt surprise, Miss Dogan stumbled as his scar fell in tatters from his face. Urza blinked at him, staring at the blue hair, so bright against the pale man's face, and the red tattoo around his eye. "Dilly Jell." Natsu hissed and backed away from the awkward situation. "You're alive." Tears came to Urza's eyes, followed by a light blush on her naturally rosy cheeks. Miss Dogan looked down. "Urza did not wish for you to see my face." "Gel." Istogan shook his head. I am not Jalali, leave the rest to you. He spoke shortly before disappearing in a puff of smoke. Urza stared after him, trembling before screaming as Laxus shocked her. At that dumb look off your face, the blonde laughed as the red head fell. She glared at him in pain. Laxus. Natsu eyed him down, frowning deeply, thinking about how Makarov was suffering because of his own idiot grandson. The blonde's grin widened. Ah, Natsu, have you decided to join me yet? Natsu walked past Urza, who still struggled on the floor. Come on, Natsu, the guild doesn't ever do anything for you. Come with us and you'll be treated like a god. Even that little bitch. Laxus's smile disappeared as Natsu's knee came into view. He easily caught it, glaring into dark, hate-filled eyes. Don't say her name from your filthy whoremouth. Now stay still so I can beat the down. Laxus pushed them away, holding out a hand. Beat me. You. Natsu, you may be strong, but I have long surpassed you. Like with Urza, he released a large beam of electricity at Natsu. The younger mage ran through it, not bothering to dodge or reflect the attack. Flame Dragon's Claw. Natsu kicked Laxus backwards, much to the blonde's displeasure. Regaining his balance, Laxus returned the kick as Natsu landed. Falling back, Natsu narrowed his eyes as Laxus grabbed his wrist to keep him in place. Don't think you can win so easily. Laxus barraged him with a hail of lightning-powered punches, all of which were blocked. Natsu twisted his arm, grabbing Laxus's wrist, pulling the blonde towards his flaming fist, successfully loosening some of his opponent's teeth. Still gripping each other's arms, the two let loose rapid, repeated punches laced with their magic. Laxus growled in frustration as all Natsu dodged and blocked his attacks. His smile returned, however, when he caught the Dragonslayer with his foot, tripping him. Natsu caught himself with his free hand and used that leverage to whack Laxus twice in the face with flaming feet. Laxus released the other, stumbling back in anger. Natsu flipped back over to his feet, only to have Urza use his head as a launching pad. Bitch, he mumbled, stumbling. Laxus deflected the woman's sword, his smile returning once again. She kept her weapon poised and spoke calmly to the man. What are those things floating in the sky, Laxus? He answered aloofly, the Hall of Thunder. I'm sure you've heard of them. She swung at him again and again, and Laxus halted her assault. Are you planning on attacking the town? She growled, much to his pleasure. Ahaha. It's a new rule. Hurts me to have to use it, but PFFT, this is all for my enjoyment. Infuriated, Urza swung her foot at Laxus. You swine. The blonde easily caught her appendage. You have 2 minutes left, better hurry, he sang. Urza swung her head to Natsu, who was standing with crossed arms behind her. Go destroy them. Natsu's eye twitched. Right, sent me to go get killed. Nice, how about this? Get your annoying ass out of here and do it your own fucking self. Now is not the time for this. She turned back to the mage, still holding her foot. Unhand me. But the Laxus threw her backwards. Urza changed armor midair and landed elegantly back on her feet. Lightning Emperor armor. Laxus chuckled. Do you think that'll be enough to stop me? Without answering, she turned to Natsu, staring into his cold eyes. She smiled gently, making him blink. I can trust you, right? Eh? Urza's smile widened and she darted past him, running outside. Don't let us down. Natsu glanced at her on the way out, searching her eyes for something deceiving, but finding nothing in the pure honest orbs. Laxus began laughing again. What's this? Going to try and take out the Hall of Thunder, are you? Don't be ridiculous. There are over 300 lacrima out there, you'll only get yourself killed. I'll destroy them all at once, she spoke confidently. Impossible. You'll die for sure. She let out a small laugh, but the town will be saved. Laxus stared at her, shocked. Why you? Are you trying to destroy the rules of the game? Boy, shut up. Laxus glared at Natsu and charged, intending to run after the redhead, but was forced down by the teenager's flames. You brat. He snarled, teeth clenched and fist shaking. Natsu only stared at him, dark eyes glowing from the light of the fire. Laxus shielded his body with his arms, bearing against the force of Natsu's attack with his legs. He was desperate now, his plans were about to be ruined. Come on, Natsu. He forced himself through the onslaught, receiving burns on his forearms. You know the guild is on its last leg. We can make it stronger. We can put the guild on top. I've already told you to shut up. Natsu put more power into his attack, knocking Laxus back. The lightning mage flipped back to his feet, breathing hard. Just help me already. If I master, no one will look down on the guild again. He glanced at Fried's runes. 1 minute 30 seconds until the Hall of Thunder was activated. Laxus grit his teeth. What is that old man doing? Does he not care what happens to the town? Natsu let out a huff through his nose. Calm down, idiot, nothing will happen. Laxus stared at him. What good would it be for you if the town was destroyed? You know very well that you will stop this crap if it comes down to that. Besides, Urza will handle it. Natsu dashed forward, leaping with heated feet. Not so easy keeping up an act, huh? Laxus growled, forming a claw with his hand. Shut up. Natsu healed the lightning user's face and propelled himself away from the claw-shaped attack. Skidding Laxus glanced back at the runes, 45 seconds remaining. That mere moment of distraction proved to be a mistake as Natsu appeared above him, both palms facing down. Laxus brought his arms up too late and was crushed to the ground by powerful red flames. Ah! Natsu landed again some ways away, watching the now steaming man rise from the crater his attack had formed. Laxus staggered to his feet, murder in his eyes. Both looked over to the runes when it beeped, Hall of Thunder out of order. Natsu relaxed his shoulders, see. Your plans won't work, Laxus. Fairy Tail is a family where Natsu sneered at his own words. How can you, who won't even try to be part of that family, despite being welcomed by everyone, expect to become master? Through force. Natsu blinked dully as Laxus raised his head, eyes now bloodshot and electricity radiating from his body in static waves. Natsu closed his eyes and sighed, opening them again he mimicked Laxus's action, covering himself in a swirl of flames, eyes narrowed to slits and glaring. I should have never tried to bargain with you lot. The ground began to shatter around the two as their power increased, Laxus mumbling things under his breath. You're only the first. Natsu surveyed him quizzically, backstepping as the mage lunged forward, leaping around like a crazed animal. Come on. I'll take anything you can throw at me. Laxus's pace and strength increased exponentially, forcing Natsu to concentrate on blocking and dodging. The fire dragon slayer jumped away from his opponent, taking refuge on one of the stable pillars to re-evaluate the situation. Laxus unexpectedly swung his arm in an arch, blowing the pillar away with a wave of electricity, catching Natsu in it. The fire mage landed with a roll, standing to wipe off some dirt on his new bruises. DCH, he looked back up at Laxus. The bastard smiled down at him with a fist raised, with his magic splitsing around his arm. Above him a ball of energy began to form, growing larger along with Laxus's smile. Raging bolt. Natsu quickly began to draw a shield in the air, but paused to look behind him as the attack hit. When the spell cleared, the only thing that remained was the decimated floor of the cathedral. Natsu was gone. Haha. Laxus jumped down to where Natsu once stood, hugging himself in hysterics. You had your chance to join me. Now you're nothing but dust dumpus. You're really fucked in the head, aren't ya? Ah. Laxus turned around to glare at the newcomer. Laughing about killing someone who's meant to be a comrade. You're one sick bastard, too bad though, cause your target's alive. If anyone's taking him out, it's me. Hello, Gagiel. Natsu brushed himself off on the floor behind the other Dragon Slayer, keeping an eye on Laxus. What, no thank you. I was planning to thwart the attack myself until I noticed your presence. I decided not to expend any magic, seeing as you would remove me from the attack range. Gagiel stared at him. You're actually pretty damn annoying. Natsu narrowed his eyes. Laxus resumed laughing. Great. A new victim. Ha 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 ha, I'll reduce you to nothing. Natsu and Gagiel stared at the deranged man, lifting himself from the floor and stepping forward. When the dark-haired mage failed to follow, Natsu turned back to look at him. I would like to conserve as much magic as possible today. With your aid you might make a 1/100th of a difference. Those odds, albeit small, are favorable, so I request you join me in ending Laxus's tirade. Did you just call me weak? Natsu ignored him and returned his attention to the disturbed man before him. The blonde twitched with electricity leaping from his skin. This is the only time I will be willing to work with you, let's go. Natsu lunged at their opponent, fists blazing. Gagiel growled, but followed suit, changing his arms to poles instantaneously. The two hailed Laxus with a shower of punches and kicks, slowly pushing the blonde back, though his smile remained. But the swing of his arm, Laxus sent Gagiel flying into Natsu, the former grabbing the Iron Dragon Slayer and swinging him like a sword. Gagiel hardened and sharpened his body, returning the favor and pushing the lightning user back more. Natsu released the human weapon, stepping back as Laxus threw around some explosive electric orbs. Fun. The spheres exploded on impact with Gagiel. Laxus took this time to begin laughing again, quickly stopping as Natsu came running up the pillar behind him. Fire Dragon's eruption. The heated detonation plowed Laxus down towards Gagiel. His arm poised as a spear, waiting. Iron Dragon's divine lance. Gagiel pierced the blonde repeatedly, rapidly, throwing him on his back. Both Dragon Slayers glanced at each other before puffing up their cheeks and roared. The blasts converted and hit Laxus dead, forming an explosive dome and destroying more of the church. Gee, is that all you can do? Laxus emerged from the smoke and dust, small cuts and shallow burns littered his body. The hit didn't work. Natsu got back into stance, preparing for the next attack. You're way too compassed about this situation. Enough. Laxus cracked his neck, leering at them. This has dragged too long. Let's just finish this off. The two other mages stared as Laxus's body changed. His canines grew and sharpened, his muscles bulged and developed scales. The old man told me to keep quiet about this. But Badgiel's eyes widened, you've got to be kidding. Too much shit is going down today. Lightning dragons. Laxus breathed in deeply. Roar. Natsu grabbed Gadgiel and jumped away as the electric torrent tore through the ground and out into the city. You're still alive? No, I'll exterminate you. All of you. Fairy tale in this goddamn city. Natsu landed and jolted at the magic filling the air. Makarovs. Law. Natsu covered his eyes, shielding them from dust. Stop with the bullshit, Laxus. He yelled over the static wind howling in his ears. What guild will there be if everyone is dead? Are you crazy? Are you going to kill your grandfather as well? Laxus ignored him, the golden ball of magic growing in his palm. Malevolent light radiating in the air. Badgiel gripped the ground, this is the spell that defeated Master Oze instantly. A new higher-pitched voice joined from behind them, stop Laxus. Natsu and Gadgiel glanced over to the battered entrance where Levi stood, tears in her eyes. Umbus, what are you doing here? Gadgiel growled, but the blue-headed girl ignored him. Laxus, please stop. Master, your grandfather. He's going to die. Everyone paused. The magic dulled slightly, and Laxus turned his wide eyes to the small girl. Natsu stared at the floor, eyes wide and unbelieving. So please, Laxus. Go see him. Natsu looked back at her, is the old man going to die? He whispered to himself. Laxus. Levi cried out again, desperation in her voice. Laxus stared at her for a while, face blank before a new smile broke across his cheeks. Well, that's convenient. Natsu turned his head to give Laxus a cold void glare. Now I don't have to worry about killing the old man myself, my chances just keep getting higher and higher. The ground cracked around him, light glowing from the floor. Laughing sinisterly, he took a step forward. Fairy tale. I'll build you again, but stronger. The ultimate guild that will make everyone tremble in fear. Bastard, Gadgiel yelled. Levi fell to the ground in tears. Fairy law. Activate. Natsu watched as the light expanded, engulfing them and the town. He expected pain, he felt none. He was still breathing. The magic wasn't working, he was alive. And somehow, he was disappointed. The light eventually dulled away, letting all of the dust and small debris the spell had picked up fall back to the floor. I did it, I've finally surpassed him. Laxus smiled, looking up at his work, the grin quickly slipped away as he gazed at his failure. Levi was still by the door, now on her knees and sobbing quietly. She stared wide-eyed at him, confusion clear on her face. Badgiel mimicked her expression, but relief saturated his eyes. How? Laxus clenched his fists. How are you all still alive, GH? The retarded blonde soon found that he couldn't breathe. The force of a knee smashing his diaphragm and up into his ribs knocked the air out of him. Then the hand around his throat kept him from inhaling. Laxus let out a choking sound as he was blasted into the far wall, his attacker never letting go of his grip. Damn it, Natsu. Get off. Laxus returned the rib-crushing favor and kneed Natsu hard in his chest, sending him to the roof. Laxus stood up sweating and wheezing. None of you. How? No one should be able to survive an attack of that magnitude. The person began approaching the open doors, they walked slowly, wobbling and holding an injured arm. Their green hair was disheveled, a few blood splatters staining it. Freed. You can't betray your heart, Laxus. Do you care for your comrades? You could never kill them. The battered male spoke calmly as he used the door as support. Levi stood up quickly to aid him. This is how you truly feel, Laxus. You're wrong. They are all my enemies. Anyone who gets in my way is my enemy. Freed sighed, leaning off the wall towards Laxus. Come on, it's over now. Just go see the master. Laxus sneered at the rune mage. I don't care about that old shit. I am my own self. I'm not just his grandson. I'm Laxus. The rock shattered on his head from above, the blonde turned his face up towards the culprit. Shut the fuck up. Natsu growled at him, though his voice was passive, tossing another piece of granite in his hand. Stop being so conceited, we know who the fuck you are. Being Makarov's grandson doesn't make you special. You're still an annoying little shit. Now Laxus growled, balling his fists covering them with static. Shut up. Despite the fierce voice, Natsu continued covering his own fists in flames, stepping a bit back from the hole in the roof. Stop being so hung up on a blood relation, the people at the guild actually give a damn about you. Stop acting like a little bitch and accept them. Laxus leaped up to the roof, fist poised. Natsu raised his blazing fist, not moving. Disappear. Natsu. Laxus bellowed as he flew towards Natsu, his fist buzzing with magic. Just die already. Natsu made no comment as Laxus reached the roof, and their fists collided. Magic blew out behind him as the spells cancelled out, throwing the two to either side of the building. They both quickly regained footing and returned to their earlier action of bombarding each other in hails of magic-powered punches. Sparks and embers flew from their blows, each trying to gain the upper ground. Natsu grit his teeth as he began to turn and quickly withdrew, jumping back. Against his expectations, Laxus followed in a blind anger, attacking him mindlessly. The battle turned to a game of dodge as Natsu looked for an opening. Finding one quickly, Natsu crouched down Laxus's fist, narrowly missing his head, then uppercutted the blonde heart in his already bruised gut. Laxus coughed blood as he flew up, landing on his back a ways away. "I'll kill you," he screamed, scrambling to get up. Natsu walked towards the wobbling mage. "This is the end." Laxus smirked, gathering magic, his eyes wide and unfocused. "The end? Yes, it seems it is for you." Natsu paused as Laxus formed a spear, some blue electricity dancing around the usually yellow on the ground. The others watched in worry. Fried's eyes enlarging dramatically as he saw the spell. "Stop, Laxus. You'll kill him." Laxus grinned wider. Elation embraced him, knowing that this spell could kill the mage before him. Lightning dragons heavenward. The spell was too fast, and Natsu was too close to be able to dodge. He barely had enough time to throw his arms up in an X before the attack hit. He was blown through the bell tower of the chapel. His arms were crushed to his chest, the high volts of electricity shocked his heart, momentarily stopping it. Natsu choked when he landed, he couldn't breathe. In the distance he could hear Laxus laughing, a dark maniacal laugh. Natsu coughed as he got up, hands clenching around the rubble beneath him. He unsuccessfully tried to rub out the blistering pain on his arms and chest, staring at the figure in the distance. His vision blurred in and out of focus, standing slowly became difficult. "Sorry, Makarov, your grandson might not come back today." Natsu growled quietly to himself, raising an arm. By this time Laxus had realized that he was still alive and backed up from the edge of the roof, frustrated, infuriated. This can't be, you can't still be alive." Laxus flared his teeth and snarled bitterly, paying no mind to the magical circle below him. Natsu stared at the delusional man, arm outstretched, palm to the sky. With a deep labored breath, he flicked his fingers, muttering a spell, and watched as Laxus's body burst into flames. The man yelled in pain and surprise before falling and writhing in agony as the flames receded inside of his body, burning him within. Natsu fell back to the ground, coughing blood. He kept his eyes on Laxus, clicking his tongue when the body seemed to stop moving. "Damn, I tried to not kill him." He sighed and ran a hand down his face, exhausted. "Sorry, master. Thanks for watching this video. If you really enjoy this video, like, subscribe, and comment down below, and turn on that bell notification. Don't forget to support and follow the Blackhatred for writing that awesome fanfic, and also make sure to comment on this story, link in the description. See you in the next video. Goodbye.